in climate change. So before I go into like giving the context of Nepal, I know all of you all might be knowing what climate change and all is, but just to set a context, just in case, I've also put a few slides on what climate change in a very simple way. So I will start with that just to set the context. So don't worry, the whole presentation is not going to be on the theories of climate change. So we all know that climate change happened because of the global warming, and the global warming is, of course, due to natural things happening as well as man-made, and producing a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which warms the earth, and that causes a lot of disruptions like floods, like droughts, and all these things. So just to show you one of the IPCC maps, don't try to see all the like, NASA and all those things. Just see the graph. If you see this graph from between 2000 to 1980, you can see the graph really going high up, sharpening, the temperature of the earth going up, okay? This is the IPCC report. And if you see the next one, similarly, the types of droughts, floods, or disasters that is happening has also really gone high. So that is showing a very like close linkages with climate change and all the disasters that are happening, okay, with a slight rise in temperature. And what does it mean for development? Most of the reports like UNDP, IPCC reports have shown that when these warming happens, there is a lot of problem with water shortages, agricultural productivity, biodiversity, and forest. And in some places, there's really high drought. And in some places, in higher places, like, for example, in Nepal, in Mustang, if the apples were in Jomsom, now the apples have gone quite high up, and we can see apples growing in Upper Mustang, some of the areas in Upper Mustang, like Samar and all also, okay? So the changes is affecting a lot of these sectors. And if you see with the development, if you compare it with the development, when you see these also affects agriculture productivity, water scarcity, extreme weather events, and collapsing ecosystems and things like that. So this is climate change. So because Nepal is the fourth vulnerable country in the world, the impact is also severely affected in our country. So all these are the pictures of Nepal in Tarai, high up in the mountains, mid-hills, pictures out here, okay? So now I want to go into the main part of our presentation. So why gender and climate change? What are the linkages? Why we are talking about it? Particularly, first, I want to take it from, in gender, like there are two genders, women and men, but I want to take it from the women's perspectives, and mostly from the rural women's perspectives. In Nepal, as you all know, women play a very critical role in supporting households and communities, and they are often the main managers of natural resource management. Why? Because fuel wood, water, NTFPs, the non-timber forest products, and going to the forest every day. So they are the main, they play a very critical role, and they also have very high knowledges in these areas. So just to show you, even if they are very highly engaged, just to show you some inequalities, which is directly linked to climate change, particularly if you see the agriculture sector, where more than 75% women are engaged. And if you see where they are engaged in activities which carries less value and less visibility. Due to this means like watering, carrying manure to the field, or doing weeding, storing the crops, all these works which needs daily engagement, but which usually does not carry much value. And if you see this graph, the blue are women, and the red point is for men's engagement in agriculture. So across in Nepal, you all know that Nepal is not a monolithic or a homogeneous group. So if you see in the graph, if you see the here, from hills to the Tarai, in all caste and ethnicity and groups, and both in hills and Tarais, women are highly engaged. This is an old survey data. We haven't had a new data, but if you do, the sporadic study also shows similar kind of a graph. So you can see like how much they are engaged in agriculture, and which is also highly affected by climate change. And this is the study we had done in the forestry sector. If you see, the red ones are women and the blue ones are men. And most of what I'm trying to show out here is most of the activities which requires daily engagement and daily management of forest are done by women. And the ones which does not need daily requirement, but is, valuable engagement, like timber, like, fire line construction, forest patrolling, all these are mostly men are engaged. So here also what I'm trying to show is the day-to-day engagement, that's where you have to focus, is mostly women. And this is also across mostly all caste and ethnicity, but mostly people in rural areas, and even among rural areas, the ones who are more poorer and ones who are living more closer to the forest areas. So here, what I want to say is, these graphs show that women are mostly engaged in voluntary, unpaid, and undervalued forest work, which are mostly labor intensive and mostly invisible work, okay? Okay. And the other one, what I want to show is, what does climate change do? Because climate change affects these sectors. If, for example, in the forestry sector, if women had to spend, 1 day to collect fuel wood and firewood for a month or something, now they have to spend more time because there is less growing, even in the field. In the agriculture, the mud is more harder. They have to spend more time in digging, more time in manuring, less water. So all the work has increased. And all these sectors, which is affected by climate change, are, as I told you before, are the sectors where women are highly engaged. So what does this mean? Already in Nepal, women have very high workload because of their household responsibilities, day-to-day responsibilities. So with climate change, you must have read in most of the reports, and also our own observations and our own experiences and studies also shows that this workload has really increased very high. But what does a closer, because when I joined my profession when I was in the early 90s, that time also workload and time poverty was very one of the biggest issues for women. And we still talk about it today also, and it's even become higher. But in my study, I was looking closer into this time poverty and why haven't we been able to tackle it? And what we found out was, we asked to these women, and these women said, in most of the forums or decision-making forums or committees, or where there are trainings and things like that, most of the time we always hear women cannot be, we cannot bring women to these decision-making forums because they don't have time. We can't bring in women for the training because they can't give time. All these narratives are around, and it's still going on. It's still stronger. And what can we do? That is the narrative there. But when I was asking these women, we found out that, in the villages in Nepal, there's a lot of community work where the villages will have to do. Either it's cleaning the forest or cleaning your village or clearing up during the monsoons, giving voluntary work. It's very high. And most of these works are not easy. Because of climate change, if you have to go to clear the forest, and there are so much invasive species with thorns and all, and women say that it's really difficult to clear, okay? So what they said is, of course we do, even if we don't have time, we get fined, so we go and give our voluntary time to them. But the narrative is, these works still women are doing, but when we talk about bringing them in the decision-making forums and committees, they say time poverty is there. They don't have time. So that is one area where, we as development workers and we as people who try to bring some change is an area where we have to look into, okay? So that's what I said. They have access and control, but in areas where it's not valuable and visible. But this was also a recent photograph in the East where I was traveling and doing some research work. In the East, there and especially nowadays, a lot of development agencies have become quite active in, producing vegetables, and because of the road connectivity is increasing, and community forestry is doing well, and they do harvesting of the timber. And if you see wherever there is money, or wherever there is transactions of these kinds of things happen, a very high engagement of men is seen. So despite women's engagement increasing in entrepreneurial aspects, the story hasn't changed much. We say women have money in their hands, but again, if it goes to a larger scale, the transaction is mostly done by men, except for few cases where good leadership has been formed, but it's always a men's domain, okay? But the picture is not, listening to me, you might say the picture is quite grim and all showing that Nepal has still not progressed from, 30, 40 years ago. If you see that, there's a lot of change happening in women's area also, especially women leadership positions because of the government's policy. 40% of the representation in local governments we have, 25% of leadership in community forestry is women. And the other very interesting thing today, that's about me, and I've worked for different all the development intervention development organizations. There are lots of I didn't work very closely with the Danish, but where women for quite a while, marginalized groups, Swiss, and even men, SDC also have platforms to organize and Europe and Europeans organize themselves. Sense, yeah. Either to do entrepreneurial works, today we'll be presenting works, or even discuss. Of course, it's based on our experiences. So there are very good, but mostly on some of the researches which Kishore and I did together. Nepal is one of analyzed the most, and we've tried to set the context of climate change, which is so much policies, especially real and happening in Nepal. The Maoist movement. Our presentation will be showing the linkages of why we should women and marginalized women progressive policies and strategies, climate change. So that will be our focus, especially to integrate, should I start, Neil? Groups. And the change is not only in Kathmandu or in big cities. Yeah. Change has happened.
Neil, you are muted.
In mountains,
yes.
in remote.
Sorry, I was muted. Please start.
And Tarai also. So these are all the pictures of women who are organized up. This picture is of Upper Mustang. Here it's of the Maji community, very marginalized Maji communities in Tarai. These are in the hills. Women have been organizing. Can you see the screen? And they have been you can see a lot of
yes. Can you make
women's force
yes, perfect.
In the rural areas. So my thing is. But having said this, despite this, the topic of our presentation is what does a deeper analysis gender matters show? That's very important. So before I go into, even if we are a very small context of Nepal, it's I know diverse. All of you all might be knowing and climate change and all this, but just to set a context, just in case, I've also put a few slides at the same time. Climate change, in a very simple, being small also is sometimes it's difficult to manage. So don't worry. The whole presentation is not going to be on the theories of climate change. Progress has happened, but it has not happened equally. We all know that climate change, even among men and women, because of the global warming, and the global warming is, of course, groups, people living in very natural things happening areas, as well as man-made, and there is a lot of carbon dioxide. So the main atmosphere which warms the earth, and that progress happened. A lot of disruptions, all the data that we floods, saying that, and all the good policies that we see, and all these things. Who has it benefited? Just to show you one of the who are the ones who are reported in this progress. Okay, so if you see in these two pictures, one of the pictures is like NASA and all those things. Just see the graph. West Tarai area. If you see this graph, where between even these are all women leaders and people have organized, but you can see the dimensions out here also, like who's leading, going high up, sharpening. The temperature of the earth going up. The other thing, this is the IPCC report. In the progress, and if you see the next one, to clearly see is similarly the types of
engagement
droughts,
and
floods, or
participation
disasters that is happening has
of
also
women and
really gone
marginalized
high.
groups have really
So
increased,
that is
and we
showing a
boast
very
in our
like
reports.
close linkages
And
with
also Nepal
climate change and all the disasters.
it's not a
that
bad
happening,
thing. It has
okay?
increased.
With a
But again, here
slight,
also a
rise
deeper
in
analysis
temperature.
and a deeper,
And what does it mean for development?
look into
most of the reports like UNDP, IPCC reports
who is
have
being
shown that
engaged,
when these
where are they being
warming
engaged,
happens,
who is left
there
behind.
is a lot
we talk
of
a lot
problem
about
with water shortages,
sustainable
agriculture
development goals,
productivity,
and one of the main
biodiversity,
things they
and
say
forest.
is leave no one behind.
And in some places,
but in
really
the context
drought,
of Nepal,
in some places
despite being very
higher
small,
places like
there is a
for
huge
example,
group
in,
of people
who
are left
Nepal,
behind.
in
This is one of the
Mustang,
pictures
if the apples
also
were in Jomsom,
in one
now
of
the
our
apples have
research
gone quite
areas,
high up,
where
and we can
these
see
couple
apples growing in
lives
Upper
very close to
Mustang,
the
some of the
forest.
areas in Upper Mustang like Summer.
They didn't
and
even know
also,
that
okay? So
there were like groups
the changes
existing in
is
their
affecting
villages,
a lot of these sectors
because they were so busy in their
and
own
if
lives.
you see
And
with the development,
all
if you
the groups
compare
that
it
are
with the
formed,
development,
all the trainings
when
that
you
are
see
all
these,
the
also
beneficiaries that
affects
goes
agriculture
hadn't touched
productivity,
this
water scarcity,
couple
extreme
at all.
weather events,
And despite being very
and
close
collapsing
to
ecosystems and things like that.
to the
So this is climate
communities
change.
who
So
have been
because
leading
Nepal
there.
is the fourth vulnerable country in the
Similarly,
world,
also
the
here,
impact
like
is also
this is also
severely
one of the
affected
pictures in
our country.
Terai.
So all these
It's very
are the pictures
interesting.
of
This
Nepal
woman
in
was
Terai, high up in the mountains,
taking these 5 goats,
mid-hills, pictures out here.
and I wanted to interview her, and she got really angry
now
with
I
me.
want to go
said,
into
like, why are you interviewing me? You are the ones who gave us this
So why
goat,
gender?
and it seems
and
these 5
climate change,
goats
what
are
the linkages?
neighbors' goats also.
Why
so
we are
they take
talking
turns
about
to
it.
take it to the forest.
Particularly, first I
and
want
she
to
said, you all come and give one goat,
in gender, like
and
there
then
are 2 genders,
and then come and monitor us
but
all
I want
the
to
time.
take it from the women's perspective.
It's like we can't
and
even
mostly from the rural women's perspective.
survive with this goat for
in Nepal, as
one
you all
whole
know,
year, and it's such a burden for us. We have to cut, we have to look after
communities.
So I don't even have time
and
to
they
give
are
interview
often
to you.
the main
So
managers,
like in the development interventions also, we are very happy. We give 1 goat,
Why?
2
Because
goats,
fuel wood,
and
water,
then we do this livelihood programs,
NTFPs, the non-timber
and we
forest
try
products,
to say that okay,
and
this is how
going
you
to the
should
forest
adapt and
every
mitigate
day.
the climate
they
changes.
are the main. They play
but
a
the
very
story is
critical
very
role, and
grim.
they also
so
have
this
very
again we
high
have to see
in this area.
who is being engaged, how are they being
just to
engaged,
show you,
and what are they being engaged in.
even if they are very
important.
highly engaged.
Similarly,
just
and
to
these
show
are
you
the
some
groups of women who
inequalities,
are
which is directly linked to
part
climate
of
change.
the
Particularly if you see the
benefit a little
agriculture
bit,
sector,
who are
where more than 75%
than the
women are
the pictures I
engaged.
showed you, who are left behind.
And
these,
if you
these
see
groups are not left behind.
if you see where
but
they are
even
engaged,
within
they
these
are
groups,
engaged
if you
in
see
activities,
there are like very exclusive
less value and less visibility.
Pockets in the same community.
This means
also.
like watering.
So here is a
manure
picture
to the
where
field,
they
doing
do get some
weeding,
benefits,
storing
and they are called to the
crops.
meetings.
All these
they come to the
works,
meetings,
which needs daily engagement, but which usually does not carry much value. And if you see this graph,
these are other women leaders.
The blue
like
are
women,
real
women
and
leaders
the
in the
red
villages.
point
and if you
is for
see
men's
clearly,
engagement
these
in
are some of the
agriculture.
meetings. Like
so across
some
in
of the
Nepal, you
meetings
all
where
know
we
that
were
Nepal is not
making
a monolithic
big
or a
benefit
homogeneous
sharing policies for
group.
climate change.
So
like,
if you
if the
see
carbon
in the
money
graph,
comes,
if you see
how will it be shared? Those kinds of discussions were happening, and I was in one
from
of the
hills
meetings.
to the Tarai,
and here, because I work in this area,
caste
I made sure that
and groups,
all these
and both in
women
hills
from
and
very
Tarais,
marginalized groups,
women are
of
highly
course, women
engaged.
leaders,
this is
an
old
share
survey
and tell
data.
their
We haven't had
needs
a new
and tell
data,
their priorities.
but
So
if
we
you
made a very
the
good
sporadic
plan.
study also shows
And what
similar
happened
kind
was,
of
because I was very much engaged in this
so you can see
process,
how much they are
so I was like
in,
following through. So once we
and which is
finished
also
making,
highly
of
affected
course, we
by
are consultants,
climate change,
and we work with the
and
government.
this is the study we had done
but,
in
all
the
their
forestry
things,
sector.
everything was put in
if
the
you
report.
see, the red
And,
ones
I
are
was also
women,
very happy,
and the blue ones are
groups
men.
of people, women
and
leaders
most
also
of what I'm trying to
were
show
very
out
happy
here is
that
most of the
their
activities
inputs went to that
which
policy and
requires
strategy
daily
and programs of the
engagement and daily
government
management
and
of
of the bigger
forest are done by women,
institutions.
and the ones which
but you know,
does not
when
need
once
daily
this
requirement, but
plan
is,
and when this strategy was
valuable,
developed, everything what they said was cut
timber,
off. It was not
fire
there.
line construction.
So these invited space which I got from
patrolling,
Neil,
all
we
these
bring
are
them
mostly
in, but
men
how are they
engaged.
participating?
So here also what I'm trying
they
to
are
show is
speaking, they
the
are writing,
day-to-day
they are spending
engagement.
time, they
That's
their
where you have to
voices
focus,
entered.
is mostly
But what
women.
happens
And
in
this
the
is also
process
across
again? So
mostly
none of the
all
things which
caste
they
and
said,
ethnicity,
except
but
for one or
mostly
two
people
lines
in
of
rural
saying that
areas,
women
and even
and
among rural
marginalized groups
areas,
will be benefited.
the ones who are
All
more
the things
poorer
that they
and
had
ones who
put
are living more closer to
was
the
missed in the big
forest
policy
areas.
when it went. So here also I want to
So
show
here,
you
that what I
know.
want to say is when
these
we say
graphs show that
engagement,
women are mostly,
should we be happy
engaged
because
in
they
voluntary,
engage? They really
unpaid and
engaged in
undervalued
this, because
forest
I was
work,
there. I witnessed this.
which
They're
are
really
mostly
engaged
labor
here.
intensive,
But the question
and mostly
is
invisible work. Okay,
you know, what is the what
Okay.
happens to the engagement?
And the other one,
That we have
what
to
I want to
question.
show
So,
is,
you know,
what
I'm trying
does
to
climate
show
change do? Because
different
climate
layers
change
of Nepali
affects these
society,
sectors.
for
Where
example,
lots of
in the
things are
forestry
happening,
sector, if
but you know,
women had to spend
and not
you know, one
happening,
day
you know, to collect
and
this,
it's not as
collect
what we
fuel wood
see.
and firewood
And
for
this is
a
another
month or something.
that's to do with the benefits with the
Now they
government
have
and
to spend
bigger
more time
institutions,
because there
this
is
inside the
less
village again,
growing,
you know?
even in the field.
Again here, in
this
the
is the
agriculture,
picture
the
of
mud
our
is more
studies
harder.
again,
They
where
have to spend
it's
more
in
time
the
in
Karnali
digging,
area,
more time
on
in
the other
manuring.
side, less water.
These groups
So
are really
all the
highly
work has
marginalized,
increased.
endangered,
And all these sectors which is affected by
groups,
climate change,
indigenous groups,
as I told you
groups,
before,
they are very highly
are the
forest
sectors where
dependent,
women are highly engaged.
lives in
So
the Bardia
what does
National
this mean?
Forest areas.
Already in
So
Nepal,
in this picture
women
also we went
have
there, and
very
there was
high
only
workload
one
because
of
you know,
their
hill
household responsibilities,
Chhatri
day-to-day
women
responsibilities
in that village.
So with climate change,
And she was also,
I mean,
an
you must have
entrepreneur
read in
and
most of
also
the
wife
reports,
of
and
the
also our own
ward
observations and
chairperson,
our own
and she was also
experiences
the
and
women
studies
leader
also
out here.
shows.
So we
that
all
this
had discussions,
workload has
group works,
really
which we are
increased
sharing
very
out
high.
here.
But
No matter how many
what does
times
a
we told her
closer,
to sit
closer
together with us,
you know,
she
when
wouldn't,
we,
you know.
because
So you
when
can
I
see the
joined
dynamics.
my
Even
profession
when I was
in the villages
in the early 90s,
like, and she's
that
always,
time
because
also
she's
workload
educated
and
and
time
highly
poverty was
connected,
very,
she's
like,
always
one of the biggest issues
front
for
face
women.
of all the
And we still
interventions
talk
outside
about
people.
it.
Of course,
Today
we
also
also
went and talked
even
with her
become
because
higher.
but you know,
She
in my
is,
study, I was looking
the
closer
contact
into this
person for
time
all these
poverty,
women. So,
and why
so you
haven't
can
we
see
been able
like
to tackle
what
it?
happens there.
And you know what?
This is another picture
We
again.
found out was, we went to
We asked to
in
these
Nepal,
women,
we
and
have a
these
very
women said,
small
like,
minority
you know,
community
in
of
most
Muslims,
of the
Nepali Muslims we have.
they are in
Forums or
Tarai, they are in
decision-making
Kathmandu,
forums,
and they are in the
or
hills scattered, but
committees,
this is in the Tarai Muslim
or
area.
where there are, like,
And
you know,
this
trainings and things
Muslim
like that.
leader, women
Most
leader,
of the
is
time we
very,
always
very
hear
powerful leader. She's
women
also
cannot
nationally
be,
very well known.
we cannot bring
So we
women
also
to
went
this
decision
it's in a
making
very
forums
remote area
because
in
they don't
Bhatia.
have time.
So we also
We can't bring in women for the
interviewed
training
her.
because they can't give
And
time.
you know,
all these
what we
narratives are
realized is, of
around,
course, we
and it's
stayed
still
one
going
night
on.
in
It's
that
still
village.
stronger.
But the
And what can
dynamics
we do?
is,
You know, that is
when
the
we
narrative
say
there.
that,
But when I was asking
developing
these women,
interventions, we say that, we have, like,
we found
empowered
out
Muslim women,
that, you know, in the
But
villages in
here,
Nepal,
what we
there's a
found
lot of
out
community
is
work
this one
where the
women,
villages will have to do.
as
Either
in the case
it's
of the
cleaning
Raji
the forest, or
was
cleaning your
controlling the
village,
whole
or clearing up
village
during the
women,
monsoons,
all the
giving
development
voluntary work.
interventions. She was
It's
the
very high, and
you know,
most of
chairperson
this
of every
works are
other
not
group
easy
in the villages
because of climate change.
So
If you have to go to
virtually,
clear the forest,
and there are so much
she
invasive
was
species,
helping, but
with
the other
thorns
women
and all, and
could
women
not
say
do
that it's
anything
really
without her.
difficult to clear. Okay?
So
So what they said is, of
I mean,
course
it
we
was
do. Even
little
if
bit
we don't have
apparent,
time, we
but
get fined. So we
we
go
really
and give our voluntary time to them.
found her to be,
But the narrative
instead
is,
of like
these
really
works
empowering
still
the
women are doing
to some
but when we
extent,
talk about
a gatekeeper
like bringing them in the
to the other
decision-making
women
forums
also.
and committees,
So
they
when
say
we
time
say, like,
poverty
if this is a
there. They
very
don't have
remote
time.
area also, you can
So
see
that
the
is
dynamics,
one
the power
area
structure which
where
happens.
so what we what this study
we as
we
development
found out was,
workers, and we
of course,
as
we generated
people
and
who
strengthened
try
and
to bring
empowered a
some
lot of
change,
local women,
is an
and,
area where we
grassroots
have to look
women.
into. Okay.
So
But
that's what I said. They have
who have we
access
done?
and control.
Again, who,
but
what, where,
in
how,
areas
how are they
where
participating? Those kind of
it's
questions
not
there.
valuable
And mostly in
visible.
most of the cases we found out,
But
either
where,
women
again,
from
where
higher
this was
caste
also a
groups,
recent
or who
photograph
are
in the east where I was
economically
traveling,
and politically very well
and doing
connected.
some research work.
Even more than the caste,
In the east,
I think
there
the political
and
connections,
especially
and
nowadays,
network,
a lot of development agencies
was one of
have
the
become quite
strongest
active
in
producing
areas of
vegetables,
exclusion we
and
found
because
out.
of the road
And only
connectivity
a handful of
increasing,
these
and
women leaders
community
getting the
forestry is
opportunities.
doing well,
So,
and they do harvesting
when we
of the
talk of
timber.
climate, there's a
And
lot
if
of
you see
climate
in
resources and
wherever
climate
there is
finance is
money,
coming, and
or
our national
wherever
policy
there is,
says that
like,
80% of that
transactions
climate
of these
finance
kinds
have to
of
be spent in the
things
rural
happen,
areas.
a very
So
high
if we
engagement
don't
of men
understand
is seen.
these gatekeeping
So,
and this very exclusive type of
despite
leadership and
women's
exclusive type
engagement
of
increasing in
participation that goes on,
entrepreneurial aspects, the story hasn't changed
that is
much.
where
We say
we
women
see the
have
very
money in the
skewed
hands,
data of
but again, the larger if it goes
people
to
left
a
behind or
larger
people
scale,
not
the
benefiting. section is mostly done
And
by
that's the
men,
same
except for few cases
again, I'm
where
trying to show more
good leadership
in
has
the
been
case of
formed,
men also.
but it's
Even
always
among the
men's
men,
domain,
it was
okay?
very interesting. This is the
But
picture of
the
the
picture
same
is not,
meeting where I
mean,
took it separately.
listening to me, you might
And
say
he's a
the
Tharu
picture is
man
quite
who's
like,
also an indigenous
grim and
community,
showing
fairly
that Nepal has
marginalized
still not
in the southern part,
progressed
where in
from,
Chitwan with
30, 40 years
the
ago. if you see
most
that,
famous national park,
you know,
that's
there's a lot
where
of
they
change
reside,
happening in
and this is also a
women's
picture of
area
Chitwan.
also. And he's a Maji community,
especially
more of
women
a,
leadership
you know, highly
positions because of the
policy, government's
group there.
policy.
So this is a
40%
picture of the same
representation in local governments we
meeting.
have.
And
25%
throughout the meeting,
of
we
leadership
had
in community forestry is women.
this man,
And the other very, you know, interesting
he didn't
thing
even
that's
lift his
happening,
face once. He didn't speak a word.
and
you know?
it's thanks
so again,
to all the
because
development
like I work so much in
there
inclusion,
are
we
lots
always
of, like, you know,
stay a longer
platforms and
period in the
networks
field. And I
where
went and had a
women
separate
and
meeting in his
marginalized
own
groups
house
and
later
even
on.
men
And that time
have
he
platforms to
he
organize
really,
and
said that,
organize
oh, we
themselves,
can't, like,
either
again,
to
you know,
do
the
entrepreneurial
gatekeeping
works
happens
or
there also.
community development
So it's
works,
not only among
or
women,
even, you
it's
know, discuss their own
it's so complex,
issues.
you know.
So
You
there are
have to
very
see
good
this exclusion happens.
platforms and networks
When we talk
formed.
about Nepal, we
And
only talk about
also,
caste and
Nepal
ethnicity,
is
that
one of the
exclusion
most,
happens, but the
you know,
dynamics
countries in the
inside
world
there,
where we have
and the
very
micro
progressive
dynamics,
policies,
and even within the
especially
same,
after
like, you know, indigenous
the Maoist
groups
movement
also,
we had.
it's
The new
it's so
constitution
you know,
gave, like, you know,
it's we have to really
rise
look
to
into
lots
it.
of very progressive policies and strategies.
So what are the implications?
Especially
course,
to integrate
when these things
you know,
happens,
women and marginalized
when
groups.
for the people who are
And
left
the change
behind,
is
or
not
who don't
only
have
in
access, or
Kathmandu
who
or in
are
big cities.
not
Change
part
has
of the,
happened,
you know, leadership, or who are not part
you
of
know,
the
in
political
mountains,
networks,
in remote
really
hills
have
and
very limited
and
access
Tarai
and
also.
participation.
So these are all
and
the
usually they are
pictures
not part of
women
any
who
of
are
these things, and
organized
not
up.
part,
This picture
not
is
the,
of
you
Upper
know,
Mustang.
stakeholders of
Here it's of the
the
Maji
external
community, very
development
marginalized
interventions.
Maji communities.
And even
in
as I
Tarai,
said, for
these
the
are in the
empowered women
hills.
also, it's the same
Women
thing.
have
Okay?
been organizing,
As I said,
they have
the
been,
spaces
like,
which
you
we
know,
give,
you
you
can
know, the
see a lot
invited
of
spaces which we give, it's all based on
women's
generosity, and it's not
in the
an
rural
area
areas.
where they come and claim their rights.
But having said this,
And then,
despite
as
this,
I told you before,
you
a
know,
place where they can really be, they are heard,
progress,
they
what
bang
does
the
the deeper
table,
analysis
but
show? You know,
they cannot
that's very
influence.
important to see,
So,
because
so
even
Nepal,
if we are a
when
very
we say
small country,
we have, like, you know,
it's so diverse.
it's a very interesting
and
country
it's
to
so,
learn
our social
about,
structures
you
are,
know, how development works, you know, and to
complex
learn
at the
about
same time,
the
you
beautiful
know,
strategies and
being
policies
small
we've
also
made.
sometimes is
And
difficult
also
to manage.
how
So
people have
what
been
does the deeper
navigating and
analysis
maneuvering and
show?
also manipulating
Progress
these
has
spaces.
happened,
So
but it
we
has
have
not
everything.
happened
If you
equally.
see, we are very,
So
very,
even
like,
among
you know,
men
even
and
in
women,
climate dialogues,
even among
in
socially
the
excluded
nationally,
groups,
you know,
people living in very marginalized
communication
remote
reports,
areas,
we are supposed to have one
there
of
is
the
a lot
best
of difference.
inclusion
So
and
the main
gender,
question
you know, policies
comes
and
like,
strategies, and we
whose
were like
progress
really,
happened?
you
All
know,
the data that we see
recognized globally for
saying
that.
and all the
But
good
again,
policies that
of
we
course,
see,
that is one
who
step.
has
But
it
the other
benefited,
step,
or
the whole,
who second
who are the
generation
ones
issues
who
that
are
have
reported
is
in this
left
progress?
is
Okay.
of these
So if you see in
we
these
have
two
to see.
pictures, one of the pictures is in the hills, and one of the pictures is
So
in
of course,
far west,
like, you know,
Tarai area.
are we mindful
Where,
about this in the new structuring
even these are
process?
all
That is
women
very
leaders, and
important to
people have
see.
organized, but you can see the dimensions out here also, like
So
who's
that's where
leading.
I end.
You know,
And also
a little
the other
peek
thing,
to how development is happening,
in the progress,
and what we have to clearly see
development is
is
working, and
we say engagement and
answer,
participation
Kishore and I, both of us are happy
of
to answer
women
your
and
questions.
marginalized groups have really increased, and we boast in our reports.
Okay.
And also Nepal, also,
Thank you
I
so
mean,
much,
it's
Divya.
not a
That
bad thing.
was,
It has increased.
But again, here also
extremely
a deeper
rich.
analysis and a deeper, you know,
I knew it would
look
be,
into
but you lived up and went beyond all my
who
expectations.
is
Thank
being
you so much.
engaged. Where are they
Can I
being
just say
engaged?
that if
Who is left
anybody
behind?
has
We talk
a
a lot
question, you're
about
very welcome to
you know,
write it in
sustainable
Danish,
development
and
goals, and one of the main things they say is
translate
leave
it,
no one
present
behind.
it. So that's
But
not a problem.
in the context of Nepal,
I'm
despite being very
certain if
small,
there are
there is a
any
huge
questions
group of
as
people
yet in the
who are
chat.
left
But
behind. This is one of the pictures also
maybe
in one of our research
that,
areas,
I can
where these couple,
ask
you know, lived very close to the
couple of
forest.
questions while people are
They didn't
thinking.
even know that you know, there were like groups
Divya,
existing in their villages,
well,
because they
also
were so
Kishore,
busy in
because
their
I
own
know you
lives,
can answer these
and
or contribute to
all
these
the
as well.
groups that are formed, all the trainings that are, all
Migration,
the
and
you know
particularly
beneficiaries
men
that goes,
moving
hadn't touched
overseas,
this couple
is
at all.
still a very big
So and despite being
factor
very
in
close to
many households, and
to the, you
particularly
know,
households in rural
communities
areas,
who
in the
have
far
been
west,
leading there.
in the hills, etc.
Similarly, also here, like,
Is
this is
that
also one
having
of the pictures
a
in Terai.
positive or a
It's very
negative
interesting. This woman
impact
was
on the position of
taking
women,
these 5
and
goats,
particularly women in
and
poorer
I wanted to interview
communities,
her, and
in
she got
remoter
really angry with me,
localities,
and she said,
when
you
it
know, like,
comes
why
to
are you interviewing
engaging,
me? You are the
not
ones
just
who
in
gave us
seeking to
this
manage
goat,
the
and it
effects of
seems these
climate
5
change,
goats
but
are
actually
her
trying to
neighbors' goats also, so
maybe
they take
influence
turns to take it to the
policies.
forest. And she said, you all
That's
come and give
one
one goat,
question. And if I can
and
also
then come
throw
and
a
monitor
second
us all the
question in,
time, and
and I think it
it's
came
like
out
we can't
very
even
clearly in your presentation,
survive
and
with
that
this
is
goat
the
for
importance
one
of
whole
being
year, and
able
it's such a
to
burden for us. We have to cut, we have to look
influence
after.
those who
So I don't even have time
represent
to give interview to
one.
you. So,
And that
like in the
begins
development
in
interventions
local
also, we are
government,
very
it
happy. We
begins in
give
the
1 goat,
wards,
2
it begins
goats,
in the new
and then
municipalities.
we do this
Now,
livelihood
one of the
programs,
things we've
and
seen in
we
Nepal
try to say
is
that, okay,
in
this is how we should adapt
2016
and
came the
mitigate
new
the climate changes.
municipalities.
But the story is
They
very
had
grim.
more
So these,
resources
again, we
than
have to
the
see
former
who is
local
being
government
engaged, how are they
institutions.
being
They were meant
engaged,
to
and what are they being
bring
engaged in is very important.
many aspects
Similarly,
of
and these
decision
are the groups of
making
women
in
who
forestry, in
are part
agriculture,
of the
in climate
committees
change,
who
etc.,
benefit a little
closer
bit,
to
who are
communities.
one layer
Have you
higher than
seen that?
the
Can you
pictures I showed
see
you,
a
who are left
positive
behind.
effect?
These groups are not left behind.
Okay.
But even within these groups,
the
if you
first
see,
one on migration is
there are like very exclusive
positive impacts,
yes and
pockets
no,
in the
again,
same community
and
also.
it
So here
depends
is a picture
upon,
where community,
they
and
do
culture
get
to
some
culture.
benefits, and they
One
are
of the
called to
thing
the
which is
meetings,
happening,
they come to the meetings,
especially for the very
but,
poorer families, because very poor families are also
they don't benefit much,
taking
as
a lot of
said, again.
loans and going,
And
so
then
for
these
the
are
people
other
who
women
don't have
leaders,
much
like women,
safety
real
nets
women
around the
leaders
home,
in the
for them
villages.
it's been very difficult.
And if you see clearly,
in one of my
these are some of the
interviews
interviews
like
and studies.
some of the meetings where we were
It was a very like
making
heart-wrenching
big benefit
story. One
sharing
woman
policies
said
for
that
climate
she said
change.
that, like, if the carbon money comes,
I said, how
is
will
it when
be
your husband,
shared? Those
those
kinds
kinds
of
of
discussions
discussions
were
were
happening,
happening,
and I was in one of the
what
meetings.
happens?
And here, because I work
asked,
in
and
this
she said,
area,
like,
I
before
made
they
sure
go
that
also,
all
it's very
these
hard because
women
they have to
from
collect
very
money.
marginalized
It's a huge
groups,
amount of
of course,
money to
women
send them.
leaders,
Come
and
she said, like,
share and
the
tell
first
their needs and
the
tell
first
their
few months
priorities.
they
So
don't
we
send
made a very
money.
good plan. Okay,
And when they send
what
money,
happened was
that money has to
because
be
I was
gone
very
to
much
pay the
engaged
debts.
in this process.
So she
So
says,
I was
like, when their
following
husband
through.
is
So
gone,
once
at
we
least for
finished making,
one
of
to
course,
3
we are like
years,
consultants.
it's a very
and we
painful,
work with the
difficult
government,
time.
and we gave,
And that is the time they are
all
very
their
vulnerable,
things,
and
everything
also
was
go
put in
into
the report.
violence,
And
or
I was also very happy.
And I'm talking about the very poor
women
families.
leaders also.
And in the
very
very
happy
first,
that
before and
their
after, like
inputs went to that
the time
policy
period
and strategy
and
and
she said
programs
that
of
is
the
the time,
government,
like,
and of the bigger
a lot of things happens, and
institutions.
neither they have to do the
But
work
when
that
their
once
husband has
this
been doing
plan, and
they
when
have
this
to
that the loan is
strategy
there,
was developed,
they have to look after the house,
everything
the
what they
children,
said was cut
and
off,
because they
it
are
was not
especially
there.
in Tarai, because
So
their husbands
these
are not
invited
there,
space,
their
which I
mobility
got
is
from
also been
Neil,
restricted,
because
bring them
if
in,
they are seen
but
going
how are
out
they
too often,
participating?
even for
They
work
are
or anything, and
speaking,
if
they are writing,
mobile,
they are spending
and they
time,
have
they
like
their voice is
character
entered.
assassination,
But what
saying their
happens
husband
in
is
the
not
process
there, and
again?
where are you going all the time?
None of the
so
things
the gaze,
which they said,
except for one or two lines
gaze
of
is very
saying that
high on
women
them at that time.
and marginalized
So
groups will
that's
be
the suffering
benefited.
part,
All
So
the
when you
things
talk
that they
about
had put
influencing, again, here
was
you have
missed
to
in the big
question,
policy when it
which
went.
kind of
So
migrant
here also I want to
families
show
are
you
influencing the
that,
decisions. Obviously, the
when we
migration is
say
happening in even
engagement,
the
should
the
we be
more,
happy because they
established
engaged, they really
households.
engaged in this?
So
Because I
for
was
them,
there, I witnessed this.
again,
There
there
is
is
another
engaged
kind of
here.
dynamics happening.
But the question
the wives,
is, women are taking more leadership positions because what is the what happens to
financially
the
they are a little
engagement?
bit richer, and
That
then
we have
husbands
to
are not
question.
there.
So
I'm trying to show
automatically they are
different
taking
layers
more
of
responsibilities
Nepali
and
society
being more
where
recognized.
lots of things
And there
are
are
happening,
and
but
then
whether they
and not
influence or not
happening,
influence, again the question
and it's
is
not as
what we
because
see.
women,
And this is
really
another
influence the
mainstream
that's to do
budget
with the
is a
benefits
big
with the
question in
government
Nepal.
and bigger
They
institutions.
may be able
This
to
is
influence
inside the
the
village
smaller
again,
budgets
again
of
here
agriculture.
this is the picture of
entails
our
a few
studies again,
kilos
where
of seeds,
it's in
or
the
a little bit of a
Karnali
water
area.
tank.
On the other
But
side,
if it comes to
these
large
groups are really
infrastructure
highly
like
marginalized,
road,
endangered,
big water tanks or big water
groups, indigenous groups called Raji groups. They are very
irrigation,
highly forest
canals
dependent.
and know,
they cannot.
lives in the
So there's a
National
dynamics
Forest
there also, I
areas.
think, you know.
So in this picture
And
also
your
we
second
went there,
question,
and there was
on
only one.
the resources have reached
hill
closer to the villages. Yes,
Chhatri
of course,
women
it has reached, you know,
in that village.
So if you
and
see,
she was also an
before when we
entrepreneur
had
and also the
VDCs,
wife
village
of the
development committees, the
ward
smallest
chairperson,
unit,
and
we
she
had
was
9
also the women
wards.
leader out here.
So
we
each
all had
ward
discussions,
had
group
3 to
works,
4
which
people.
we are sharing
So
out here.
all together around,
No matter
there
how
were
many
45
times we told
people
her to sit together
for
with
that.
us, she would.
So the same,
So you can see the
same
dynamics.
VDC is
Even
the size
among
of a ward now.
among in the villages,
One ward is as
like,
big
and
as a
she's
VDC.
always, because she's
And there are
educated
5
and
people.
highly connected,
Okay?
she's always the
And in these 5
front
people,
face of all the interventions
2
outside
to 3
people.
of
Of course,
them
we also went
have
and talked
come
with her
from
because
these
she
seats, you know, the reserve
the
seats.
contact person
So
for
they
all
are
these
just
women.
like
So you can see like
token
what
people.
happens there. Okay.
So now
This is
if
another
you see
picture again.
in the local level, in the ward
We
level,
went to
which is
our
the closest
in Nepal.
to the
We have a
village,
very small
community level,
minority community
there are
of
2
Muslims.
people, either a chairperson or the
Nepali
secretary,
Muslims we have,
who is
they
ruling
are
everything.
in Tarai, they are in Kathmandu,
And the worst
they are
case
in the
scenario
hills,
is,
scattered, but this is in the Tarai Muslim area.
There's a
And
one-door
this,
policy now.
Muslim
So
leader, women
everything
leader, is
has
very,
to go
very
through
powerful
this
leader. She's
ward
also nationally very well
entity
known.
out there, the 5
So we
people
also
ward.
went.
So
It's in a very
even
remote
if
area
it is
in
if
Bhatia.
it is a
So we
small
also
like
went and
agricultural
interviewed
help they want
her.
to get from,
And the
what we
province,
realized
or
is, of
from
course,
the
we stayed one
municipality,
night in that
or
village,
from the ward.
but the dynamics
The
is,
channel is through them.
when we say
Even
that
the outsiders going
our
is the
development
ward,
interventions, we
and
say that,
inside is
oh,
going
we
to
have
ask
like
empowered
if
Muslim women
in
you
one
know.
of the villages,
But in here, what we
vocational
found
work,
out is this
this lady
one
said,
woman,
if before I
as in the
could
case of the
directly
Raji
walk in
community,
the district
was
to
controlling the whole
the health office,
village
or to the
women,
forestry office,
all
or
the
to the water
development
office,
interventions. She was
and
the
take my
chairperson of
demands
every
and
other
right.
group in the villages.
Of course, it's
So
far, but if I could
virtually,
go, at least something would happen.
I mean,
But
she
now they
was
have to go
helping,
through the
but
ward to
the
reach
other
there.
women
So this
could
one-door
not do anything
policy,
without her.
45 to
So
controlled by
it was
2. I mean, it was
people, and then
before, even if there are wards and villages,
really
because we did not have an elected
body
there
found
before.
her to be,
So
instead of
at
like
least
really
the
empowering the women,
government's
to some
officials
extent,
were there.
a gatekeeper.
But now it's an
to the other
elected
women
party
also.
system, and then
So
another
when
layer
we
of
say
party
like, if
politics
this is the
there.
very remote area,
So,
so you can see the dynamics, the power structure.
I mean,
which
in some
happens.
villages, I'm
so
not
what
saying
we
all, but
what
in
this
some
study we
communities,
found out was,
of
where
course, we
the ward
generated
chairperson,
and
for
strengthened
example, in
and
Upper
empowered a lot of
Hindustan, where I
local
used to
women,
work, and
one of the
grassroots
local
women.
lama became the ward chairperson. He's doing wonderful work. But
who
that's
have
just
we
piecemeal.
done? Again, who?
But
What?
largely
Where?
it is
How?
political.
How are they
It
participating?
is
Those kind of
more
questions there.
exclusive.
And mostly,
All
most
the
of the
work you
cases
did,
we
Neil,
found
with
out
this
either
7-step,
women from
13-step planning
higher caste
processes are
groups,
gone somewhere.
or who are
The ward
economically
citizen
and politically
forums, the
very well
women's
connected.
forums,
Even more than the
are
caste,
almost
I
like,
think the
and all
political
these
connections and
invited
network
spaces which we talked about, the
was one of
organized
the
women's groups
strongest
and all even the community forestry,
areas
for instance,
of exclusion
are
we found
becoming
out.
weaker,
And only a
because
handful of
this
these
political
women
like,
leaders were getting the
and
opportunities.
everything
So,
is, when we
around
talk of
infrastructure,
climate, there's a lot of climate
because
resources,
and the other thing is,
climate
because
finance
this
is coming, and
at provincial
our
level, you
national
can make
policy
your
says
own
that 80% of
laws
that
and
climate finance have to be
and
spent in the
strategies
rural
and
areas.
policies. So if we don't understand these,
in a way, it's very good
and
because
this
it's
very
decentralized.
exclusive type of
But
leadership,
who's
and
making the
exclusive type
policy
of,
and who's influencing the
participation that goes on?
So obviously, my studies before
that is where
all these things
we
showed
see
that
the very
there's so much
skewed
elite
data
capture,
of
even in the small resources where
people
women
left
become
behind
leaders,
or people not
of course, these
benefiting.
women have reproduced the same leadership of the male,
And that's the same thing.
It's a
with,
thing.
Again,
So,
I'm trying to show more in the case
it's
of
a
men
challenge,
also.
of course.
Even
of course,
among
people
the men,
can
it was
go,
very
and because
interesting.
it's so
This
close,
is
they
the
can
picture
also
of
challenge
the
these
same
structures.
meeting where I took it
But
separately. And
to
he's
a
a
larger
Tharu
extent,
man who's
there's
also
a lot of work to be
indigenous
done.
community,
There are a lot of opportunities
fairly
there,
marginalized in
but
the southern part, where in Chitwan,
that's
with
the scenario, I would say. Yeah.
the most famous national
If
park,
I was to
that's
ask
where
you
they reside. And this is
to
also a picture
answer
of
this
Chitwan. And
very
he's a
shortly,
Maji
is this a
community,
glass half
or
full
more
or
of
a glass half
highly
empty?
indigenous group there. So this is the picture of the same
half empty, I would
meeting.
say.
And throughout the meeting we
Okay, very good.
this man,
we have a question which I think
he didn't even
Kishore
lift his
has
face once. He didn't speak a
partly
word,
answered.
So
Are any of
again,
these results
because
published,
like
and
I
where
work
can
so
we
much in
find the
inclusion, we
results?
always stay longer even
Kishore
in the
has
field.
replied.
And I went and
I
had
don't
a
know if you
separate
want to
meeting
add
in his
anything
own
to that,
house later on.
Kishore.
And that time he
No,
was,
I mean, most of these
he
works
really,
we have done for,
said
as
that
you know,
for
we can't, like,
development
again, you know, the
organizations here,
gatekeeping
right?
happens there also.
So
it's not
most
only
of
among women,
them
it's
are
all,
internal documents,
it's so
but
complex,
there
you know.
are some
You have to
reports
see
which
this
have been
exclusion
published, like I
happens.
have shared
When we
here.
talk about Nepal, we only
The
talk about
state of
caste and
gender in
ethnicity, that
Nepal
exclusion
regarding
happens, but the
climate change, which
dynamics
was done
inside there
through
and the
ISIMOR,
micro dynamics,
right?
And even within
and
the
the
same,
UN
like,
Women
indigenous groups also,
Empowerment Project, which is a published document.
it's so,
and there's another one which
we have to really look
which
into it.
Divya did with Walken, I think,
So what are the
Women Organizing
implications?
for Change in
Of
Natural
course,
Resource
when
Management.
these things happens,
This was also about like
for the people
gender
who are left
integration in
behind
the
or
rate
who don't have
process.
access or who
Yeah, and
are
it's mostly about
not
what
part
she
of the
said. Like, I mean, there
leadership,
is
or who are
that
not part of the political
participation, but
networks,
how
really
meaningful
have
is that
a
participation?
very limited access and
And to just
participation.
quickly
And
answer
usually
your
they are
first
not
question,
part of any of
men
these things, are not
migrating,
part,
of course,
not the
very first
stakeholders of
answer to
the
that,
external
it has
development
given that
interventions.
space for women to take
And
the
even as I
leadership
said,
at
for
home
the
since the
empowered women
husbands are
also,
not
it's
there.
the same thing. Okay.
But at the same
As I
time,
said,
it has added
the
more
spaces which we
workload.
give,
She has to
the
cover what
invited
her
spaces which
husbands
we
were
give,
doing outside.
it's all based on
Okay.
generosity.
I mean,
And
just
it's
to give
not
a simple example,
an
we
area
have
where they
a
come
helper,
and
a
claim their
Bahini who
rights.
comes to help
And
us
then,
here.
as I told you
In
before,
fact,
a place
her
where they can
husband
really be,
migrated
they are heard,
to
they bang the table,
Norway, right?
but
Divya?
they cannot
New Zealand, New
influence.
Zealand.
So,
New Zealand,
so
just few
Nepal, when
months
we
ago, to
say
work in
we
an
have,
Indian restaurant,
like,
and they had to
it's a
take
very interesting
15 lakh
country to
rupees loan
learn
for that.
about,
They had
how
to pay that
development works,
money
and to
to
learn about
the
beautiful strategies
migration
and policies we've made,
hotel owner.
and also how
And
people
she
have
they
been
didn't have all that
navigating
money,
and
and
maneuvering and
they had
also
taken a lot of loan.
manipulating these spaces.
And that's how, in fact,
So
she landed up
we have
working at our
everything.
place also.
If you see,
So
we are very, very,
now she
like,
has to
even in
earn as
climate
much as
dialogues,
possible, like
in
what Divya
the
was saying.
nationally,
She cannot expect anything else
communication
from her
reports,
husband for
we are supposed
at
to have
least
one of
for
the best
3 to 6
inclusion
months.
and gender,
Because
policies
he
and
himself, he
strategies,
has to
and we
first
were
settle
like
down
really,
the pay for his rooms, blah, 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 and all
recognized
that.
globally for that.
Clear up the
But
payment
again,
to the,
of course, that is one
to
step.
the
But the
hotel
other
owner
step, the
there.
whole
I mean,
second
these are just
generation
very
issues
simple
that
practical
is
issues.
left is
I
of
mean,
these intricacies.
what I'm trying
we
to
have
say
see.
is, like, when men migrate,
So of
it
course, like,
adds up to the burden
are
of
we
women
mindful
at
about
home.
this
I mean,
in
it's
the new
both, it's very
structuring process?
dilemmatic.
That is very important to see.
It gives that space for her to be
So
free,
that's where I
also
end.
empowered to represent her husband, which
A
at the
little
same
peek
time
to
means
how
that
development
the
is happening
workload has
and
been
development
added now.
is working. And I'm
Of course, there are
happy
issues
to
like
answer, and
violence,
Kishore and I,
gender
both of us
violence
are happy
things.
to
She
answer your
has to
questions.
be,
Yeah.
safe by herself and not being able to.
Okay.
There have been cases
Thank
like,
you
I
so
think
much,
there was
Divya.
one
That
research
was
where we found out
extremely
earlier
rich.
the husband used to go
And I knew it would be, but
not fetch
you've lived
water,
up
but
and
to
went beyond all my
fix the water
expectations.
pipeline
Thank you
during
so
the
much.
nighttime.
Can I
During
just
the day,
say that
it
if
goes to the
anybody
irrigation and
has
all
a
that.
question, you're
At
very
the same
welcome
time,
to
it
write
goes
it
for
in
drinking
Danish,
water.
and we
Now,
will translate
when
it,
the
present
men
it.
are
So
out,
that's
the
not
women
a
have to
problem.
do that.
I'm
And
not
that's leading to,
certain
like,
if there are
gender violence
any
and all that.
questions as yet in the chat, but
So it's like, I mean, like what she said, it's
maybe
both, I think it's a glass
given
half
that,
full.
I can ask a couple of
It's a very
questions
complicated situation.
while people are thinking. Extremely. If I can, I'm still waiting for also questions, because I know you can answer these or contribute to climate change. We tend to separate, and particularly men moving sudden overseas events is still a very big in the Nepal context would be many households, particularly when you households in rural areas, in the far west, in the hills, etc. High up in the Himalayas. Is that having a positive or a negative impact on the villages, position of women, and particularly women in poorer communities, in remoter localities, coming down? When it comes to engaging, not just in seeking to manage the effects of climate change, but actually trying to maybe people talk about is slow onset, which that's what you were showing in the graph. And if I can also throw a gradual increase in temperature, and I think it came out very clearly in your presentation. Rainfall that is the importance of being able to times, etc., influence those. And I was just wondering, one aspect of that is the health implications in local government. It begins in the wards. I know I was in the new municipalities visiting. Now, one of the things we've seen in Nepal, and it struck me that there was much more. 2016 came the new municipality, and this is partly because they had more resources, coming higher, former and they're also institutions. They were meant to not just malaria, bring, and this must affect many aspects of decision-making, women, forestry, in agriculture. I'm just wondering whether or not this is something climate change, etc., which you're seeing closer to communities.
Yeah, it's huge. It's
Have you
huge.
seen
Like
that? Can you see
the cost
a positive
people have to
effect?
pay, I think,
Okay.
or if they don't pay, they have
the
to
first
suffer
one
not
on
working,
migration
is huge because of this
positive impacts, yes and no.
climate,
Again,
and nowadays, like
it depends upon
the graph which I showed,
community, and
it's so
culture to culture.
apparent out here.
One of the things which is
like,
happening,
we had like
especially for the
floods in
very poorer families,
flash
because very
floods,
poor families are
and
also,
landslides in Mustang. We had
taking a lot of
and
loans and going.
I mean, in far west we
so
had.
for the
I mean,
people
India
who don't
also
have
you saw
much
those kinds of
safety
things
nets around the
are
home,
happening.
for them,
Till
it's been
now,
very
we are
difficult.
up in today.
In one
only
of my
become very cooler again. It's
interviews
become
and
hot,
studies,
because by now
it was
in
a very,
Kathmandu we didn't have to like
story. One woman
actually we
said
didn't
that,
have
she said that
ACs and fans before, air coolers and
I
fans.
said, how is
Now
it when
this
your husband,
summer
when your
it's
husband
become
is
so
out, like,
hot.
what,
And as you
what
said, this
happens?
dengue,
Of course we fumigate,
we live inside
like,
ACs and all.
Before
for
they go
for
also,
poorer people,
it's very hard because
it's
they have to
difficult to
collect
go out
money.
and work
It's
in
a
the
huge
farms
amount of
also.
money to send them.
Especially
And,
like
and she said, like, the first
there is
year,
more
the
longer
first
period
few
of
months,
drought
they don't
and
send
shorter
money.
period of intense rainfalls.
And when they send
so
money, that
what
money
happens
has
is
to
this
be
extreme
gone
weather.
to pay the
Even
debts.
if we get the rain, what happens
So
is
she says, like, when the
at least
husband
what
is
the
gone, at least
I mean,
for
I'm not an
1 to
agriculturist,
3
but what the
years,
farmers
it's a
in
very
one of my
painful,
studies, what they
difficult
said
time.
was like
And that is the time they are
soil
very
becomes
vulnerable,
so
and they
hard
also
because
go
of
into
this
violence
intense
or,
thing. So
and
like
I'm talking about the very
digging it
poorer
for,
families.
plowing
And in the
it
very
is
first,
before
more
and
expensive.
after, like if they took one day to plow before, and she said that is the time,
it
like
takes 2 days for the same
a lot
thing.
of things happen.
And I didn't know in
neither
some
they
parts
they
of
have to do
Kaski,
the work that
one of the
their
village
husband has
women,
been
where
doing.
again a husband was a
They have
migrant,
to that the
where
loan
she
is
said
there.
that they have to look
in
after
villages,
the
there
house,
always
the children,
a barter system
and because
of giving
they are,
labor
especially in
exchange and
Karai,
all.
because
So
their
usually
husbands are
in that
not
village,
there,
one
their
day of
mobility is
plowing,
also
if they can't
restricted,
pay,
because
is
if
2 days
they
of
are
women's
seen going
work in the
out too
field.
often,
Okay,
even for
so
work
this
or
woman was
anything,
saying,
and if
if
they're mobile,
I have to
and they
like
have
if he
character
spends 2 days
assassination,
plowing, then
their
she has
husband
to
is
give
not
4
there,
days
and where are you going all
in
the
the
time,
same field. So the
of labor
gaze
to another people.
the societal gaze
Similarly
is very high
with
on them at that time.
this,
So that's
and the health
suffering
implication
part,
that comes with
so
it.
when you talk about
Overworking,
influencing,
less
again
food,
here we have to
and more
question
mosquitoes, preventing
which kind of migrant
and
families
becoming
are
sick, more sick
influencing the
of,
decisions.
and
Obviously
then
the
you can't go
migration
to
is
work.
happening in
So
even
who fills these gaps?
the more
We don't have a
established
households.
I mean in India
So
during
for
COVID
them,
time also,
again, there is
and,
another kind of
there are
dynamics
so
happening.
many the wives women are taking more leadership positions because
schemes in India where
financially they are a little bit richer,
the government
and then
gives
husbands
rice
are
and
not
all.
there.
That
So
also we don't have in Nepal.
automatically
Rice
they
and
are taking
dal
more
and
responsibilities
sugar and all, little bit of
being
oil
more
is given.
recognized.
Okay?
But in
And
Nepal,
there are
we don't even
and,
have
and
that.
then
So
it's
whether
very
the
like,
influence or
as
not
you said, the
influence,
health
again,
is
the question
really being
is
affected
because
and
women,
especially with
to
this
really
dengue, and
influence
now
the mainstream budget
budget
is
a
also
big question
coming
in Nepal.
and
They may be able to
I mean,
influence the
it's
smaller
really bad.
budgets,
And the other biggest
of
thing is water
agriculture,
scarcity,
which
So,
entails a few kilos of seeds or a
this
little bit of a
year, I
water
think after
tank.
COVID,
But
something
if it
happened
comes
and we
to
got a
larger
little bit more
infrastructure
rain.
like
2-3 years,
road,
it's been
big
slightly more
water
rain
tanks or big water,
we had for 10 years spell. Every
irrigation,
year they had
canals and all,
like
they
spell
cannot.
of dry
So
weather.
there's a
and
dynamics
a
there.
very short
Also,
span
I
of
think,
rain.
And
So,
you're
and
also
second
not
questions
timing.
on
But something happened.
the
I think with
resources have
COVID time,
reached
we are getting
closer to the villages.
yes,
Rain
of course,
monsoon
it
is
has
coming on
reached,
time at least.
So
Even if it's
if you
less or
see,
more, that's another thing.
before when
But
we
at
had
least. So
VDCs,
that
village
had also
development
affected
committees,
a
the
lot of,
smallest
like,
unit, we had 9 wards,
and it had health
so
implications.
each
nutrition
ward had 3 to
implications,
4 people.
stress
So altogether
implications.
around there were 45
But
people.
that's there.
So the same
climate is affecting.
VDC
That's
is
why
the
it's
size
so
of a
much
ward
related
now.
to the
One
development
ward is as big as a
which we are doing,
VDC.
but
And there are 5
exaggerated,
people,
as you said.
okay? And in these 5 people,
I mean,
2 to
just
3
to
of
add on
them
to what Divya
have
said
come
regarding
from these
health implications
seeds,
of
the
climate
reserve
change.
seeds. So they are just like,
I don't know what's wrong with my video.
token people. So now, if you see
we
in
can hear
the
you.
local level, in the
Yeah.
ward level, which is
And
the
of
closest
course,
to
like,
the village,
I mean, it's
community
not that we
level,
have done a
there are
research,
2
but I
people,
think it's a
either
very general
chairperson or the
observation
secretary,
that
who
we
is ruling
didn't have
everything.
dengue for a long
And the
time.
worst case
And
scenario
in the
is,
past 1 or 2 years, it has really come
there's a
back.
one-door policy now.
That's
So
obviously because
everything
the mosquitoes
has to
are
go through
really steadily, I mean, you
ward
know, growing.
entity out
It's
there, the
going
5
higher
people
and
ward.
higher in the, I
So
mean, we are getting
even
it
if
in
it is
Kathmandu
a
also, because
small like
as we know,
agricultural help they want to
malaria,
get from
dengue, and all these
the
mosquito-borne
province or
diseases used
from
to
the
be mostly in the
municipality
Tarai
or from the
flatlands
ward,
earlier.
The
right?
channel is through them.
And my
Even
very
the
simple
outsiders going
observation
is
in
the
the
what,
past
and
years have
inside is
been
going to ask.
earlier during
If
the monsoon,
in
we
one of
used
the
to have a lot
villages,
of like,
both
you know,
Kishore and I
decent
work,
problems.
this lady said,
I mean,
if before
especially
I
because
could
of floods
directly
and like the
walk in
water
the
getting
district to
contaminated and all that,
the
right? We
health
used to have
office
a lot
or
of
to
that
the
in
forestry
Kathmandu
office
also.
or to the water office
Those
and
this
take
year,
my,
I don't think in the
demands and
recent
right.
years have been
Of course, it's far,
that
but if I could
much
go,
happening.
at least something would happen.
But I
now they
think
have to go through the
dengue
war
thing,
to
we
reach
did not
there.
expect
So
that.
this
Like
one door
in Dharan, the
policy,
whole
45
town had to be closed
controlled
down
by
for a week.
2
You know, the
people,
local
and
government,
then
they had
before,
to
even
declare
if there wards
curfew
and
because
villages,
the
because
dengue
we did
was
not have an
spreading so
elected
fast,
body there before,
especially through schools.
so at least the government's
I mean,
officials were there.
that definitely
But
is
now
an
it's an
indication
elected
that,
party
I mean,
system, and then another
the
layer of
traditional
party
old
politics is there.
historical epidemics
So
we had earlier,
I mean, in
maybe
some
it's coming
villages, I'm
back.
not saying all, but in
I
some
mean, malaria
communities,
is supposed to be
where
eradicated,
the
right?
ward
So not
chairperson, for
Kala-Azar and
example, in
dengue
Upper
and all that,
Mustang,
but
where I used to work,
so we
one
don't
of the
really
local
know,
lama
but
became the
I
ward
mean, it's
chairperson. He's doing
definitely
wonderful
related
work,
to the
but
temperature
that's just
change and
piecemeal.
all that.
But largely,
You know, I
it is
mean,
political.
having an
It
extreme
is
hot
become more
climate
exclusive.
and like that's giving that
All the work you did, Neil, with
space
this
for
7-step,
mosquitoes
13-step
to
planning
breed.
processes are gone somewhere.
Maybe because of more
The
rain
ward
also,
citizen
there are more
forums, the
stagnant
women's
waters,
forums are
you
almost
know,
like,
puddles
and
and all
all
that.
these
So we don't
invited
know. I
spaces
mean, we
which we
haven't really
talked
done the
about, the
research, right,
organized
Divya? I
women's
don't
groups
think
and all, even the
there
community
have been that
forestry,
much of
for
research on
instance,
health
are
implications
becoming
of climate
weaker
change and,
because
you know,
of
all
this
these
political, like,
old diseases coming back.
and everything is around infrastructure. And the other thing
Was
is,
that a
because
question to
this
Divya, or?
at provincial
No,
level,
I
you can
mean,
make your own
that's what I hope.
laws
My
and plan,
observation, very simple.
and
I mean,
strategies and policies.
I think it's very interesting
So,
because
in a way, it's very good because it's
I
decentralized.
just wonder whether we could
But who's making
turn
the
it
policy
around
and
as
who's
well to
influencing
say,
the
are there
policy is another
some
question. So
benefits from
obviously,
slow onset climate
my
change?
studies before
And I'm
all these
thinking
things showed
here
that there's so
that,
much elite capture, even in the
I mean,
small
one
resources where
thing
women
which
become leaders.
Nepal
Of course, these
is
women have reproduced
very
the same leadership of
strong
the male
in
thing.
is being able to
It's a thing.
perhaps
So
produce
it's a challenge,
agricultural
of course, and of
products
course
which
people
aren't
can
so
go, and because it's
reliant
so close, they can
on
also challenge the
insecticides,
structures.
pesticides,
But
because it's at a
to a
higher
larger
level.
extent,
This
there's
may
a lot
be
of work to
changing
be done.
because
There are a
of
lot of
temperature
opportunities there.
increasing
But
at a high level. But nevertheless,
the scenario, I would say, yeah.
and this is a question just straight off. If I was to ask you to answer this growing middle very shortly, is this a glass half full or a glass half empty? Which is relatively still small, but in absolute numbers is millions.
Half empty, I would say.
And in terms of a middle class becoming health conscious, they tend to have a question which I think Kishore has partly answered in Danish. Are any of these results, we say, ecologically organic produced replied. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. And I was just wondering whether or not
Most of these works we have done for, as you know, for development organizations here, right?
Due to slow onset
most of
climate
them
change
are internal documents, but there are some reports which have been published, like I have shared here, the state of gender in Nepal regarding climate change, which was done through ECMO,
available,
right? And
Yes,
the UN
I
Women
mean, there are a lot of
Empowerment Project, which is a
initiatives
published document.
going
And there's
on,
another one
especially
which was
pushed
which
by the
did
development
with Walken, I think, Women
agencies
Organizing for
also,
Change
and
in
also
Natural
private
Resource
sector.
Management.
Private sector is also
This was
hugely
also
coming.
about like
There is a niche
gender
market
integration in the rate process.
of these
yeah, and it's
organic,
mostly about what she said. Like, I mean, there is that
what do they call
participation,
green
but
enterprise,
how
and all
meaningful
these
is
things
that
are coming. There
participation?
is.
And
But
to just quickly answer your
currently,
first question,
there are also,
men
if you come
migrating,
now,
of
there are
course,
many stores
very
which
first
sell these kinds of
answer to that,
products, you know,
it
and
has
collect and
given
sell,
that
and
space
more
for
Nepali
women to
products,
take the
because
leadership at
almost
home since
more
the
than
husbands are
80%
not
of
there.
our,
But at the same
agricultural
time, it
produce,
has
whether it's
added
vegetables,
more
fruits, or
workload. She
cereals,
has to cover
comes
what
from
her
India.
husbands were doing
So
outside.
there is a very small
Okay,
production
I mean,
coming
just
in.
to give a simple
But
example, we
it
have
is
a
also
helper, a Baini, who comes to help
plagued by a lot of
us
issues
here.
there.
In fact,
One issue
her
is there's a
husband
whole
migrated
big
to
mafia
Norway,
going
right, Divya?
on. New Zealand
Just
in the
New Zealand,
fruit
just
and
few months
vegetable
ago
things
to
which
work in an
comes
Indian
from India,
restaurant,
so they don't allow.
and
There's
they
a,
had to
I mean,
take
I worked
15
when
lakh
I was with the
rupees
Swiss
loan
with
for
this
that.
thing for so much, and
They had
it's
to
really
pay
hard
that
to bust.
money
You know,
to
there's a whole
the
carteling system there.
the
But
migration
outside that
agency,
also, there is
the hotel
a
owner,
increasing market
and
of
she
organic
they
things
didn't have
coming
all
on,
that
and people
money,
are
and
in the
they had
city
taken a lot of
especially.
loan. And that's how, in fact, she
in
landed
the
up working
provinces,
at our place
I mean,
also.
every other people I meet, they're
Now
very
she has
health
to
conscious.
earn as much as
And
possible.
for us, it's very
like
easy
what
to become
Divya
health
was saying,
conscious because
she cannot
most of
expect
our,
anything else from her husband
people,
for
when
the
they
at least for
age, they go
3 to 6
into
months.
there's religious
Because
food
he
and all these
himself,
things,
he
and
has
it's
to
very
first
much
settle
related
down
to everything
pay for
organic,
his rooms,
so
blah
that
blah
way it's
blah, and
easy
all
for
that.
people to
Clear
understand
up
and
the
go into this
payment
new
to
habits.
the
But
hotel owner
it's
there.
a long way to go,
I mean,
because
these are
I've
just
seen
very
this.
simple practical issues.
Either it's very expensive,
I mean,
this organic
what I'm
things,
trying to
and
say is,
normal
like,
people,
when
like,
men migrate,
there's only a
it
niche group
adds
of
up
people
to
can
the
buy
burden
it.
of women at home. I mean, it's
But
it's very
it is
dilemmatic.
increasing. People are growing their own thing.
You know,
And
it gives
especially
that
after the
space
COVID,
for
one
her
of the
to
best
be
things that
free,
happened
also
was
empowered to represent her
rooftop
husband,
gardening, people growing their
which
own
at the same
vegetables,
time
these
means
kinds of
that
things,
the
and people being
workload
healthy,
has been
eating healthy has been
added
there.
now.
But it's very,
You know, of course, there are issues
it's
like
a very difficult thing
violence,
also
gender violence
for
things.
it to
She
become
has to be,
have a big market,
you know, safe by
and the government
herself,
support because of the
and not being
carteling and
able
the
to. There
government
have been
nexus
cases
there,
like, I
political
think
nexus
there
of,
was
because
one
they get the
research where
cuts.
we found
So
out
that's another huge thing to
earlier the
cost, I think.
husband
So
used to go
if you want to really
not
deal with
fetch
climate
water,
change,
but
I
to
think the
fix the
political
water
power,
pipeline during the
the
night
political
time.
power
You know,
will,
during the day
and
it goes
also
to
the
the irrigation
political,
and all that.
bad
At the
politics
same
or
time,
bad
it goes
governance
for
is
drinking water.
more important
Now,
than
when the
any other
men
thing,
are
because
out,
that
the
doesn't
women
allow
have
us
to do that.
do a
And
lot of
that's
things in
leading to,
Nepal,
like,
yeah.
you know, gender violence and all that. And just to add on to what
So
Divya
it's
said
like,
about,
I mean, like what she
definitely
said,
there are a
it's
lot of
both.
this,
It's,
like,
I
you
think
know,
it's a glass
organic
half full.
farming going on in Nepal. And I'm sure you
Okay.
must have heard about
very
it. The
complicated
Karnali region,
Extremely.
the government, local
If I
government, the
can,
provincial government themselves,
I'm
they
still
declared
waiting
that
for questions
Karnali
from
is going
others,
to be
but
all organic, right?
in climate
And just
change,
few months
we
back,
tend
I did
to
a research
separate
in the
between,
evaluation for an
should we say,
NGO,
sudden
which is
climate
working on food
events, which I
sovereignty.
guess in the
You know, they
Nepal
are trying to
context would
revive the
be
indigenous seeds and all
glacial
that. So, like, this
outbursts
is
when
more healthier than,
you get
you know,
a
the ones
lake up
that we import from India
high
and
up in
all
the
that.
Himalayas.
And I was in Jumla for some time.
Wells,
I
it
really went up
bursts,
high in
it
the mountain
affects
and down in the
villages on
Tarai
the way
also.
down.
And one of
It
the challenges
affects
they
the
have
Terai
is,
where you
since
get
it's going to be
flooding, so
organic
it's
and the
like a
production
chain
is so
effect
less,
coming
it's going
down.
to be
And
expensive
that's sudden onset,
than the ones
should we say,
imported from
climate change
India, or
effects.
like the ones
But there's
produced using
also
pesticides.
the other type
And
of
when it is
climate
organic,
change
the
which
volume
people
also
talk
goes
about
down,
is
the
slow
volume of
onset,
production,
which is
right? So
perhaps what you were
you
showing
won't
in the
be able
graphs
to
early
feed
on,
everybody
which
else.
is gradual increase in
And whether this
temperature,
is like, you
gradual
know, I mean, whether
reduction in
because of
rainfall,
climate
rainfall
change that
patterns
people are going
changing,
into
so they
more
come at
organic food
different times,
production.
etc., etc. And I
And
was
I
just
don't really know
wondering,
that. I
one
mean, I don't know
aspect
what
of
Divya
that
has to
is
say,
the
but
health
I
implications,
think it's
because
more
I
because of
know I
health
was in
reasons, knowing
Nepal
that the more and more
visiting
imported or like
also yourselves, and
pesticide
it struck me that there
driven
was much
agricultural
more
foods we are
dengue
eating, it's
fever in
contaminated,
Nepal, and this
adulterated,
is
and it has
partly
very
because
lot of health
mosquitoes
impacts,
are
like
now
you get
coming
cancers,
higher,
blah blah blah, and all
and
that.
they're
So
also bringing
that
dengue fever, not
consciousness
just
is there
malaria.
now.
And this must
And like,
affect
given that the
families,
media
and
also giving so
particularly
much of, like, you
women
know,
within
hype on
families.
like
I'm just
the
wondering
kind
whether
of
or not
food we
this
are
is
eating,
something
which is available
which
in the
you're
market,
seeing.
whether you, when you go to
Yeah.
a
It's
restaurant, the
huge.
oil
Yeah,
being
it's
used
huge.
and
It's
all that.
huge. Like
Maybe
the
because of
cost
that,
people have to
you know,
pay,
I mean,
I think, or if they don't
consumers'
pay, they have to suffer not
ears being
working,
filled,
is
the
huge
minds being
because of
filled by
this
the media and all that.
climate,
People are very careful with
and
what
nowadays, like
they are
the
eating.
the graph
But
which
I
I
can't
showed,
really say whether
it's
it's
so
because of like
apparent out
climate
here,
change,
is like
it's having that
we had
positive,
like
you
floods
know,
in
effect on
that
health, and
flash
people are more
floods
conscious about
and
what they are
landslides
eating
in Mustang
and
we
how they are
had, and
producing it also.
I mean, in far west
I don't
we
know,
had,
Divya,
I mean,
I
India
think,
also you saw
still
those
you know,
kinds of things are happening.
yeah,
Till now, we are up in today only it become
yeah,
little cooler again. It's become hot,
yeah,
because by now
that's about
in
it. Yeah,
Kathmandu
Neil.
we didn't have to
Okay.
like
I
actually we
have
didn't have
a question which has
ACs and
just
fans
come in.
before, air
I
coolers
think
and
it's a
fans.
very interesting one
Now this
because
summer it's become so hot, and as you said,
Denmark
this dengue. Of
no
course, we
longer
fumigate,
has
we
a
live inside
direct
ACs and all,
bilateral aid
but
program
for poorer people, it's
in
difficult to
Nepal.
go out and
Very
work in the farms
unfortunate.
also.
I don't think many people
Especially like
listening here would agree with that decision. decision.
There is more longer
But
period
there are
of drought
nevertheless
and
many
shorter period of intense
NGOs
rainfalls. So
in
that what happens
Nepal
is this
who
extreme
have
weather, even
links,
if they get the rain, what
partnerships,
happens is
etc., with
at least what the
NGOs and
I mean, I'm
individuals
not an
in
agriculturalist, but
Denmark.
what the farmers in one of my
Now,
studies, what they
the
said
question
was
I have
like
here
this,
is
the
that
soil
Nepali
becomes so
NGO
hard because of this
ASK
intense thing. So
in
like digging it
Xiangya
for
is not working with organic farming,
is more expensive. If they took 1 day to
and
plow
some of the
before,
wards supporting it. So
it
that's
takes 2
actually
days
a
for the same
note.
thing.
But
And
what I would
didn't know
like to
in some
ask
parts of Kaski,
is
one of the
going
village
back
women,
to
where again
your
a husband was a
brief
migrant,
discussion
where she said
of
that
the
they,
way
you know,
that
in
the
villages there are
distance
always a
between,
barter
shall
system
we
of
say,
giving
an
labor exchange and all.
individual
So usually in
woman
that village,
as a
1 day of
citizen
plowing, if they can't pay,
and
is
her
2 days
local
of women's
government
work in the field.
has become
Okay,
much
so this woman
greater
was saying,
and has
if I
far
have to
fewer,
like, if
shall we
he
say,
spends 2 days
intermediaries
plowing, then she has to give 4 days
involved, because
in the
the
same
ward
field,
is
you know,
like the
of labor
old
to another
village
people.
development committee,
So
etc.
similarly with
How
this
can these
and the health
NGOs,
implication that comes with
not
it, you know,
just those
overworking,
being
less
supported by
food,
Denmark,
and more
but
mosquitoes preventing,
to help us understand,
and
how can
becoming
these
sick, more sick
NGOs
of,
play
and then you can't go to work.
greater
So who
role
fills these gaps?
in
We don't have a
addressing the
government.
issues
I mean,
of
in India during
women
COVID
and
time
climate
also,
change
and you know,
at the
there are so
local
many
level? Is there a role that they can play there?
programs, schemes in India where
Of course,
you just don't die, you know,
because
people, the government gives
no
rice
matter
and all.
how
That
much
also we
we
don't
like,
have in Nepal.
complain about
Rice and
development
dal and
interventions,
sugar and all, little bit of
I
oil is
think
given, okay?
these
But in
development
Nepal, we don't even
interventions
have that.
created this
So
platform
it's
for
very
people to
like, you know, as
organize
you said, the
and
health is
work
really being
around this
affected,
new or
and
their
especially
own,
with this dengue, and now they are saying new strain of COVID is also coming,
enhance
and
their
own experience and knowledge,
it's
and also
really
to
bad.
learn.
And the other
So
biggest thing is water
NGOs and
scarcity.
INGOs play a big role.
So,
But when they play a role, that's what are the things which
this
I
year,
showed
I
in
think
my
after
slides.
COVID, something happened, and we got a little bit more rain.
Think
2-3
about and
years
to
it's
know
been
who we are working
slightly
with,
more
what
rain
we are working with.
than we
And
had
also
for
when
10 years spell.
we are, because
Every year they had,
no matter how
like,
much we
long spell of
complain
dry weather
about the
and
ward
a very short span of
power
rain.
structures in the
So,
ward,
and also not timing. But something
they are
happened,
also
I
new,
think,
you
with
know.
COVID time.
So if
we are getting
the
rain,
NGOs
monsoon
and
is coming
these
on time.
external
At least,
organizations,
even if it's
when they go,
more, that's
I
another
think
thing.
if they are
But at
aware
least,
of all these things
that
and well
had also
planned,
affected
and they work
of,
with
with
the local
and
wards,
it had health
and also
implications,
educate the
nutrition
local
implications,
wards, you know, because
stress
if
implications.
you see for so many
But
years when we didn't have any
that's
elected
there. I mean,
government,
climate is affecting.
even if the governance was
That's why
bad,
it's so much
but there was
related to the
established
development
system of people who are
work which we are doing, but
repeatedly being
exacerbated,
talked to,
as you
repeatedly
said.
being trained, or repeatedly being exposed.
Yeah.
But suddenly these newbies
Just
came, you
add
know,
on
and they
what
got all
Divya
this
said
power,
regarding health
and that also
implications
2-3
of
people
climate
in
change.
there. So of course
I
they
don't
will
know
do
what's wrong with my video.
what they understand, or what they have
We
seen,
can hear you.
and what they
Yeah.
and what
of
they're
course,
interested in.
I mean, it's
So
not that we have done a
that's why I
research,
say
but
it's
I think
also
it's a
an
very
opportunity
general
to work with
observation
this
that
local level
we
people, because
didn't
if
have
we
dengue
work
for
with
a
them, and
long
if
time,
we really
and in the past 1 or
like
2
go
years,
with
it has really
good
come back.
strategies and good
That's
interventions
obviously
and good
because the mosquitoes
intentions,
are really,
I think
growing. And going higher and higher
because
I mean, we are getting it in
steps are
Kathmandu
less
also,
now
because
than before.
as we
I
know,
think there will be
malaria, dengue, and
good,
all these mosquito-borne
outputs
diseases
compared
used to be
to
mostly in the
many
Tarai
years before.
flatlands earlier.
So that way, I
right?
think
And
it's
my
a good
very
opportunity
simple
also,
observation in the
because now
past years
I
have
think
been
slowly many of them
earlier
are also
during
being
the
accountable,
monsoon, we
because
used to have a
to
lot
be
of
accountable because
dysentery
they are
problems.
so close to the people now.
I mean,
So
especially
every
because
little
of
mistake they
floods and
make
like the
is
water
also, they
getting
are also in the gaze,
contaminated
no matter
and
how
all that,
powerful
right?
they
We
are.
used to have
They
a
are
lot of that in
also in the
Kathmandu
constant
also.
gaze of the local people.
Those this
So
year,
it's
I
a good,
don't think
it's a
in
good
the recent
area
years
to
have
intervene and
been
work also,
that
I think,
much happening.
and to
But
go there right to
I
the
think
community and work
dengue
there.
thing,
Yeah.
we did not expect that. Like
and
in
just to add
Dharan,
on
the
to what
whole
Divya is
town
saying,
had
if
to be
I
closed
got
down for
your
a week.
question right, Neil, I mean,
The local
what
government there
roles
had
the
to declare
NGOs
curfew
can
because the
play
dengue
in
was
bridging
spreading so fast, the gap between women
especially
and
through
climate change
schools.
and all that, right?
So for me,
I
I
mean,
think
that
it's if I put it very,
definitely
very
is an
naively, very
indication that
simply,
I
it's
mean
like,
the
just try
traditional
to
old
retrace the
historical
challenges.
epidemics we had earlier,
Like women have to go
maybe it's coming
cover
back.
more distance to
I
fetch
mean,
water
malaria
because the
is
springs are
supposed to be
drying up.
eradicated, right? So
Maybe the
Kala
NGOs
Jar
can
and
help
dengue
them
and
to
all
have
that, but
water
we don't
harvesting
really
system.
know. But I mean,
So
it's
that they don't have to
definitely
go
related
far to
to the
collect
temperature
water,
change and all
or
that.
try to revive the
I mean,
springs. Very
having an
simple.
extreme
I mean,
hot climate and like
or
that's giving
maybe
that
since the
space
soils have
for
hardened in
mosquitoes
the
to breed.
agricultural lands, maybe there is a way
Maybe because of
that
more
can be
rain, also
prevented,
there are more
or at least
stagnant
like
waters.
it can be addressed.
Puddles and all
Most
that.
of the
So
people are
we don't
saying
know. I
when you
mean,
go
we
to the
haven't really
villages,
done
the
the research, right,
farmers,
Divya?
either
I
men
don't
or
think
women, there have been that much of research on health
these
implications
days,
of climate
new type of
change,
pests
and
which
you
they
know,
have
all
not
these
seen before.
old diseases
And
coming
they don't
back.
really know what to do with it. And I think our Nepal Agricultural Research Center have
Is
been
that a
doing
question to
research on
Divya,
that,
or-
and there have been
No,
projects
I mean
also.
that's what
And
I
they don't want
my
to use
observation, very
pesticides for
simple.
that
I mean,
because that affects the
I think it's very
fertility of the
interesting
soil.
because
Like I was saying earlier, it's very dilemmatic.
I just wonder whether we could
there
turn
has to
it
be
around as well to say,
local,
are there some benefits from slow
solutions to all
onset
that.
climate change? And I'm thinking
I mean,
here
and NGOs
that
can look into all these gaps,
I
the
mean,
challenges.
one thing
I would say,
which
like, you know, the climate
Nepal
change has
is
brought about.
very
It
strong
definitely it has
in
been more
is
for
being
women,
able
the
to
differential
perhaps
impact, but
produce
overall challenges and
agricultural
narrow down
products
to
which
like
aren't
how it
so
can be better
reliant
for women
on
and more marginalized
insecticides,
poorer
pesticides,
community,
because
I
it's
think.
at a higher level. Now, this
And
may
in
be
that,
changing
yeah,
because of
and in that
temperature
sense, we have a lot of
increasing
experience of,
at a high level.
even in
But
organic
nevertheless,
farming, we have very, very
and this
good,
is a
innovative,
question
like you
just
said,
straight
this
off the top of
NGO
my
called
head.
Ask might be having a lot
We
of
have a
ideas. So
growing
those
middle
things also,
class
like how we
in
use it,
India,
you know, and upscale it
which is
also
relatively
important.
still
I mean,
small,
Nepal
but
has
in
has
absolute
no dearth
numbers
of
is millions.
ideas and experiments, but
And in
it's
terms
so,
of a middle
you know,
class
the governance
becoming health
structure, I think,
conscious,
no matter
they
how much
tend
we say,
to
it boils
look
back to that
more
thing. It's even if it is very good, if the
I'm
power
thinking in
structure
Danish
says
now,
it's not
more,
good, it's not
should we
good, you know.
say,
So the power structure is the one who
ecologically,
decides who is good and what is
organic
good, you know.
produced
So that's happening. So if you can work
and I
on
was
both
just
the sides,
wondering
one
whether or
technical
not,
side and also
trying
on
to
the
find a
governance and inclusion
positive
side
side to this, whether or not
for
Nepal
NGOs, and
does
no
have
matter
certain
what, I think small
opportunities
small
due to slow
NGOs
onset
is
climate
better, I
change
feel, you know, like
that
nowadays, because
could
the bigger
be
ones, of
developed
course, they say
if
that
you had
it's more
a
strategic, but ultimately
government
it boils
which
down to,
recognized and
you know, small is
facilitated
beautiful, like
the
you have a
opportunities
very
available.
focused thing, no? So I wouldn't
Yes,
mind many
I
NGOs
mean,
working in the
there
village.
are a
They will
lot of
make like
initiatives
if they work properly, you know,
going on,
it's
especially
it's
you
good
know
that way also, I
pushed
think.
by the development
Well, I know one or two people
agencies
in
also,
the meeting
and
will be
also
listening
private
very
sector.
closely
Private
to
sector
that,
is
but I
also
won't
hugely
point out who
coming.
that might
There
be.
is
I
a
think
niche
they know
market
themselves.
of
Yeah, I
these
think it's very interesting, and it's
organic,
something
you
which
know,
I think
organic
because
and
many of us
what do
come
they call
trekking
that?
in Nepal,
Green
and many of
enterprise
us
and all
come
these things are
to
coming. There is,
work with
but
NGOs or to visit
apparently
NGOs and
there are
so on. So
also,
I
if you
think this
come now, there are
this
many
discussion has
stores
been
which
very rich
sell these
for
kinds
us
of
in many ways.
products, you know, and collect and sell, and
I don't
more
know
Nepali
if
products, because
is
almost
there
more than
anybody
80%
there
of
who
our,
would wish
you know,
to
agricultural
ask a
produce, whether
question,
it's vegetables,
or
fruits, or cereals,
I'm
comes
enjoying
from
this very
India.
much because I've
So
got
there is a very
being
small
allowed
production
to
coming
put
in,
many questions,
but
but I don't know if
it is
anybody else would
also
wish to ask a question.
plagued by a lot of issues
Otherwise,
there. One issue is that there's a whole big
I have
mafia
one other
going on
point which I
in
thought
the,
about,
you
and
know,
that
fruit and
was
vegetable things which comes from India, so they
the
don't allow.
climate
There's a,
change
I
and
mean,
the
I worked
health,
when I was with the
and
Swiss with
women
this
having to
thing for so
spend
much, and
more time to
it's
achieve
really
the
hard to
same
bust, you know.
results,
It's that there's a whole
etc.,
carteling system
must
there.
have an
But
impact
beside,
on the
outside
lives
that
of
also,
children.
there is a increasing
I
market
would
of
just
organic
be
things coming on,
interested
and people are
towards
in
the
the
end
city
here to
especially,
hear your thoughts on
and
that, how
also in
children are being
the
affected,
provinces. I mean,
perhaps
every other people I
indirectly,
meet, they're very health
obviously
conscious.
directly perhaps,
And
but
for
also
us, it's very easy
indirectly
to
by
become health
this
conscious,
process
because
of change
most
which
of
is
our,
taking place,
you
and
know,
the
people,
consequences
when they
for mothers and
age, they go
sisters
into,
and
like, you know,
so
there's
on.
religious food and all these things, and
I
it's very
mean,
much
children
related to
are,
everything
because
organic, no?
especially small
So
children,
that way it's easy for people to
one
understand
way
and go into these new
schooling
habits.
and
But
access to schools,
it's a long way
health
to go,
posts and
because
all,
I've seen this,
because of the road
either it's
infrastructure,
very
whether it's
expensive,
good or
these
bad,
organic things, and normal people, like, you know,
has
it
improved
is only a
quite a
niche
bit
group
because
of
of
people
this
can buy it.
decentralization thing. They are
But
mandated
it is increasing.
to have
People are
health
growing their
posts,
own
have
thing,
schools,
especially
have
after the
things,
COVID.
and
One
have
of the
people
best things that
working there.
happened was
So
and the resources
rooftop gardening,
more.
people growing their
In
own
that
vegetables,
sense,
you know, these
it's
kinds
more
of things,
accessible
and
than
people
it
being
was
healthy,
like 10-15 years
eating
ago,
healthy,
I
has
would
been
say.
there.
Okay,
It's
but
very
having said that, mothers
it's
are
a
very
very
busy,
difficult thing also,
and the
for
income
it to
of
become
this,
have a big market,
you know,
and the
the
government
income
support because of the
sources not
carteling
being
and the
stable
government
and all.
nexus there, political
I
nexus,
haven't done
because
a
they get the
direct
cuts.
study,
So
but
that's
my
another huge
observations
thing
where
to
I
bust,
go,
I think. So
I can
when
see
if you
it
want to
has
really
affected
like
smaller
deal with
children,
climate change,
especially especially nutrition,
the political power,
especially in the nutrition side, you know,
and also the
when they are very
political,
small,
like,
and even the household
bad politics or
nutrition.
bad governance is
In one of
more
I was doing this
important
graph
than, like,
study. You said there's
any other
glacier
thing, because
out
that
there. So
doesn't
I was
allow
in
us
high up
to
in one of the
lot of
mountain
things in Nepal,
areas
yeah.
and like studying and coming down.
And just to add on to what Divya
So in
said
the house
about,
where I stayed,
definitely there
the
are a lot
small
of this
children were
like, you
not
know,
having
organic
your,
farming
corn
going
and all
on
we
in
have in the
Nepal.
morning, like
And I'm sure you must have heard
corn
about it.
porridge
The
or like healthy
Karnali
breakfast. Children were
region,
all
the
given
government,
packets of
local
biscuits,
government, the
and it's very
provincial
easy,
government
cheaper,
themselves,
like
they
in
declared
Nepal.
that Karnali
And
is going to be
biscuits
all
or those
organic,
cheese
right?
balls, which is not
And
cheese
just
balls,
few
but
months
it's
back,
like
I did a
it's a very
research in the
colorful,
CES
like in the mouth
evaluation
they
for
come.
an
So those
NGO,
kinds of things,
which is
snacks,
working on
and
food
I was telling
sovereignty.
like, and
You know, they are trying to revive the
I noticed
indigenous
that, and
seeds
so
and all
many like
that. So
garbage
like
was
this
all
is more
these
healthier
biscuits things,
than,
in the villages,
you
which
know,
we
the
don't see
ones
before
that
in
we
remote
import
areas.
from
Of
India
course, in market
and all
areas we
that.
see a lot.
And
So I
I
saw a
was in
lot of these
Jumla for
things,
some time.
in
I really
garbages.
went up high in the
And then they
mountain
said,
and
oh,
down
we
in
are
the
so
Tarai
busy, and
also.
it's then
And
we
one
give
of the
them biscuits in the
challenges they
morning.
have is, since
Like,
it's going to be
this very
organic and the
unhealthy with
production is
lots
so
of
less,
sweets
it's
and all
going to
these
be
things.
expensive
And packaged foods, which is made
than the
down maybe
ones
very
imported from
unhygienically in the
India
local
or like the ones
market or
produced using
somewhere like that.
pesticides.
So I
And when
haven't
it is
done the study,
organic, the
but
volume also
definitely I
goes
think
down,
nutrition
the volume of production,
is
right?
being
So
affected quite
you
a
won't
lot.
be
Even
able
if
to
the health
feed
post is close
everybody
by,
else.
but nutrition is
And
affected.
whether this
And
is like,
because
you know, I mean,
the other
whether
interesting thing in
because
my
of
study
climate
which showed
change
was
that people are going into
they
more
said like
organic
they
food
sell their
production.
high quality
And
lentils and
I
high
don't really
quality
know
rice.
that.
They grow
I
a
mean,
little
I
bit
don't know
in
what
rice
Divya
growing
has to
areas and
say,
lentils.
but
And they
I
said
think
that
it's more
they
because
sell
of
all of
health
that and
reasons,
buy
knowing
cheaper
that
one
the more
and
and
larger
more
quantity,
imported or
and
like
this special product goes to India or goes to like
driven agricultural
special
foods
niche
we are eating, it's contaminated,
market they have.
adulterated, and it
And
has
then they
very
said
lot of
most of
health
those
impacts, like
things
you
of
get
high quality
cancers,
they
blah, blah,
produce
blah, and all
get
that.
good
So
price.
that
And then they
consciousness
buy
is there now.
cheaper rice in large
And like,
quantities
given
from
that the
India, which
media
is like,
also giving so much of like,
I mean,
hype
way
on
cheaper than
like
what they sell. So
the
those
kind of
kinds
food
of
we are
things
eating,
indicate
which is available in the market, whether when you go to a
on the
restaurant, the
health
oil
of
being
the,
used and
the
all that.
family and children
Maybe because
nutrition,
of
and that thing
that,
is affected, I think.
you know, I mean,
And just to add on to
consumers
like what has been the
is being
impact on
filled, the
children
mind
because of
being
climate
filled by the
change
media
and
and all that.
the
People are
male
very careful with
migrating
what they
and the
are
mothers
eating.
having more work to do.
But I
right?
can't really say whether
And
it's because of like
there has
climate
not been a
change,
study.
it's
I
having
cannot give
that
you the
positive,
exact data, but
effect on health,
from my
and people are
past
more
research
conscious
work,
about
what we
they are
we were
eating
already
and how they are
seeing, and some
producing
of
it
the research
also.
which was not directly
I
on
don't know,
climate
Divya,
change, but
I
on
think
reproductive health and adolescent sexual and
Yeah.
reproductive health researches that I have done.
Yeah.
And most of these researches have shown that
that's about it.
the
Neil.
children
Okay.
tend to drop out
I
from
have
school
a question
when
which
the
has
father
just
is
come
not
in.
there.
And I think it's a very interesting
And
one
mother has
because
more work to do. So the children,
Denmark
I mean, not really
no
small
longer
ones, but
has
the
a
ones who
direct
are 13,
bilateral
14, they have to
aid
cover off
program
the workload at home
in Nepal. Very
for the
unfortunate.
father as well as
I
the
don't think many
mother's workload
people
going up.
listening here would agree
I
with
mean,
that decision.
help in the sense, the
But there
workload
are
in the
nevertheless
sense like
many NGOs
look after their younger siblings
in Nepal
so that mother can
who
go
have
out of the house
links,
since the father is not
partnerships,
there to do the
etc.,
outside work.
with NGOs and
I mean, those
individuals
issues
in
are there.
Denmark.
And
I
also
mean,
in your study,
which may
Now,
eventually,
the question I
teen
have
marriage.
here is that the
and
Nepali
which may
NGO
eventually lead to the
ASK
children's dropping out from the
is
schools.
working with
the
organic
school
farming,
attendance.
Nagakote in
So,
Sayanga,
and like
and
what
some of the
Divya
wards
was,
supporting it.
I mean,
So
data is showing the
that's
child
actually a
marriage is
note.
going
But
up in Nepal.
what I would like to ask
Child marriage, like
is
eloping and marrying.
But
going
that
back to
people are saying
your
because of the new
brief
media, some are
discussion
saying because
of the
I
way
mean,
that the distance
because of the
between,
mobile phone
shall we
and the
say,
social
an
media,
individual
so
woman
it's
as a citizen
easier for boys and girls to
and her
interact with
local
each other,
government
and I mean,
has become much greater
so that's what
and
some
has
research
far
are showing.
fewer,
Some
shall
school
we
of
say,
thoughts are saying, but we
intermediaries
don't really know what really is causing
involved because
the
the
increase in
ward is
child
like the
marriage.
old village development committee, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, those are very, very
How can these
practical observations,
NGOs,
not really being
not
researched
just
or
those
supported by
being
data.
supported
So,
by Denmark, but
I mean,
to help
the
us
trend we are
understand,
seeing.
how can these NGOs play a very good, I think we've
role
come round in a whole range addressing the issues, but at the same time around climate change, at the local level. Is there a role, ethnic diversity, caste implications,
Of course,
the
of course,
power structures within
because
groups, etc.?
no matter how
So
much
we've covered a lot of
complain
ground.
about development interventions,
I think
I
that
think
unless there
these
is a
development
last question that
interventions
anybody
created this
is
platform platform for
is
people to
very much
organize
wishing to
and
pose, then
work around
I
this
think
new or
it
their
is
own,
now 24 Danish time,
enhance their
and I
own
cannot do a
experience and
quick
knowledge, and also to
calculation, but I
learn.
know it must be
So
getting quite late
NGOs and
in
INGOs play a
Nepal.
big role. But when they
Indeed.
play a role, that's what are the things which I showed in my
Danish, we
slides
say 1,000
are to
thanks.
to think
This has
about
been
and to know
really
who we are working with,
rewarding.
what we are
Next
working with.
time
And
I'm
also
in
when
Kathmandu,
we are, because
I will
no matter how much we
reward you.
complain about the ward
with a
power
Waiting for that.
structures in the ward,
We're getting the
with
dinosaur
a dinner in
photo.
one of our
they
very
are
good
also new,
restaurants.
you know.
But on
So if
behalf of
the
Danish
NGOs and these
Nepali
the external
Association, we'd
organizations,
just like
when
to
they
say
go,
thank you
I
so
think
much
if they
for
are
being
aware
willing
of all these
to
things and well
present
planned,
here.
and they
I
work
can
with
see that
the local
various
wards,
people are clapping
and also
hands,
educate the
so
local
that
wards,
is
you know,
very,
because
very positive
if you
for us.
see
So,
for so many years when we
Divya,
didn't have
thank
any
you so
elected
much for your
government,
presentation, for your
even if the
slides.
governance was bad,
I hope
but
it
there
was
was
okay. I've
established
recorded
system
them.
of
I have
people
no
who
idea
are
where they are in my
repeatedly
computer
being
now, but
talked to,
it was
repeatedly being
fascinating.
trained, or
Kishore,
repeatedly being
thank you so
exposed.
much for
But suddenly these
supporting and
newbies
coming
came, you know,
in.
and they got all this power.
Yes,
And
I
that
wish we
also
could
two,
do
three
another
people in there.
study. There are so many studies
of
out
course, they
there
will
which
do
I'd
what
like
they
There are so many things to
what
understand.
they understand, or what they have
I'd
seen,
also like to
and
say
what they,
thanks to
what they're
Ravi Chhetri,
interested in.
who's
So
been handling the
and that's
technical
why I say it's
side.
also an opportunity
Thanks
to
so
work
much,
with
Ravi.
this
Also to
local level
Lorna, who
people,
is
because if
my
we work with them, and if we
in
really
charge of the arrangement committee, which
go with
organizes
good
the different
strategies
talks
and
we
good
hold
interventions
in
and good
Aarhus and in
intentions,
Copenhagen. And let me
I
just
think
remind those here that
because
the next
steps are less
physical
now than
talk
before,
is
I think there will
Karen,
be
Karen
good
Valentine, who's
outputs
talking
compared
about
to the many
Ramagat
layers
in
before.
Kathmandu,
So
and
that way,
she's
I
giving
think
her talk
it's a
in
good opportunity also,
Copenhagen
because now
on the
I
5th
think
of
slowly
October,
many of them are
5th
also being
October,
accountable, because have to be
and
accountable,
in
because
Aarhus on
they are
the
so close to the
19th
people
of
now.
October.
So every little mistake they make is
So
also,
that's
they
the
are
next
also in the gaze,
physical
no matter how
talk
powerful they are.
that are
They
taking
are
place, and
also
you
in
can
the
see all
constant
that
gaze of the local
on the
people.
back of
So it's
Nepal Vision.
it's a good area
So
to intervene and work also.
finally
I think,
conclude. Thank you once more, Divya.
and to go
thank
there,
you,
right,
Kishore,
to the community
and thank
and
you
work
to
there,
all
yeah.
those who attended. For
And just to
I
add
think
on
you
to
got
what
a lot
Divya
out
is
of
saying,
this.
if
I
I
hope
got
you did.
your question
So
right, Neil,
until next
what
time,
roles
and
the
next time in
NGOs can
Kathmandu,
play in
Namaste.
bridging
Thank you so much
the
for
gap
that.
between
Connect
women
with
and
that.
climate
Those who
change and all
attended
that,
this
right?
webinar.
So for me,
Yeah.
I think
Thank
it's,
Thank you so
if
much.
I put it
Very
Thank you,
very,
Lorna.
very naively,
Thank
very
you.
simply,
We
it's
will
like,
talk soon.
I mean, just
But I
try
know
to
you're
address
off
the
traveling, Divya,
challenges.
so safe travels.
Yes.
Like
Thank you.
women
Thank
have to
you.
go
Thank you.
thank you
Cover
so
more
more distance
Thank
to
you.
fetch water
Good
because
night.
the springs are
Good
drying
night.
up. Maybe the NGOs can help them to have
Yeah,
Thank you.
water
that's
Have a
harvesting
nice evening.
system,
Bye-bye.
so that they don't have to go far to collect water, or try to revive the springs. Very simple, I mean, maybe since the soils have hardened in the agricultural lands, maybe there is a way that can be prevented, or at least like it can be addressed. And most of the people are saying, when you go to the villages, the farmers, either men or women, there are new pests these days, new type of pests which they had not seen before.
Ones, yeah.
And they don't really know what to do with it. And I think our Nepal Agricultural Research Center have been doing research on that, and there have been projects also. And they don't want to use pesticides for that, because that affects the fertility of the soil. Like I was saying earlier, it's very dilemmatic. I mean, there has to be local, solutions to all that.
Yeah.
I mean, and NGOs can look into all these gaps, the challenges, I would say, like, the climate change has brought about. It definitely, it has been more for women, the differential impact, but overall challenges, and narrow down to like how it can be better for women and more marginalized, poorer community, I think.
And in that, yeah. And in that sense, we have a lot of experience of, even in organic farming, we have very, very good, innovative, like you said, this NGO called Ask might be having a lot of ideas. So those things also, like how we use it, and upscale it, is also important. I mean, Nepal has no dearth of ideas and experiments, but it's so, the governance structure, I think, no matter how much we say, it boils back to that thing. It's, even if it is very good, if the power structure says it's not good, it's not good, So the power structure is the one who decides who is good and what is good, So that's happening. So if you can work in both the sides, one technical side and also on the governance and inclusion side for NGOs. And no matter what, I think small NGOs is better, I feel, like nowadays, because the bigger ones, of course, they say that it's more strategic, but ultimately it boils down to, small is beautiful, like you have a very focused thing, no? So I wouldn't mind many NGOs working in the village. They will make, like, if they work properly, it's good that way also, I think.
Well, I know one or two people in the meeting will be listening very closely to that, but I won't point out who that might be. I think they know themselves. I think it's very interesting, and it's something which I think, because many of us come trekking in Nepal, and many of us come to work with NGOs or to visit NGOs and so on. So I think this discussion has been very rich for us in many ways. And I don't know is there anybody there who would wish to ask a question? Or I'm enjoying this very much because I've got being allowed to put many questions, but I don't know if anybody else would wish to ask a question. Otherwise, I have one other point which I thought about, and that was the climate change and the health and women having to spend more time to achieve the same results, etc., must have an impact on the lives of children.
Yes.
I would just be interested towards the end here to hear your thoughts on that, how children are being affected, perhaps indirectly, obviously directly perhaps, but also indirectly by this process of change which is taking place, and the consequences for mothers and sisters and so on.
I mean, children are, because especially small children, one way schooling and access to schools, health posts and all, because of the road infrastructure, whether it's good or bad, has improved quite a bit because of this decentralization thing. They are mandated to have health posts, have schools, have those things, and have people working there. So, and the resources going more. In that sense, it's more accessible than it was like 10, 15 years ago, I would say, okay? But having said that, mothers are being busy, and the income of this, the income source is not being stable and all. I haven't done a direct study, but my observations where I go, I can see it has affected smaller children's, especially nutrition, especially in the nutrition side, when they are very small, and even the household nutrition. I was doing this GLOF study, you said there's a glacier outburst. So I was high up in one of the mountain areas and like studying and coming down. So in the house where I stayed, the small children were not having your, corn and all we have in the morning, like corn porridge or like healthy breakfast. Children were all given packets of biscuits, and it's very easy, cheaper, like, Nepali made and biscuits, or those cheese balls, which is not cheese balls, but it's like, it's a very colorful, like, mouth become. So those kinds of things, snacks, and I was telling, like, and I noticed that, and so many like garbage was all these biscuits things, in the villages, which we don't see before in remote areas. Of course, in market areas, we see a lot. So I saw a lot of these things, in garbages. And then they said, oh, we are so busy, and then we give them biscuits in the morning. Like, this very unhealthy with lots of sweets and all these things. And packets foods, which is made down maybe very unhygienically in the local market or somewhere like that. So I haven't done the study, but definitely I think nutrition is being affected quite a lot, even if the health post is close by, but nutrition is affected. And because the other interesting thing in my study, which showed was, they said, like, they sell their high quality lentils and high quality rice. They grow a little bit in rice growing areas and lentils. And they said that they sell all of that and buy a cheaper one and larger quantity, and this special product goes to India or goes to like special niche, market they have. And then they said most of those things of high quality they produce get good price. And then they buy cheaper rice in large quantities from India, which is like, way cheaper than what they sell. So those kinds of things indicate on the health of the family and children, nutrition, and that thing is affected, I think. Yeah.
And just to add on to what has been the impact on children because of climate change and the male migrating and the mothers having more work to do, right? And there has not been a study. I cannot give you the exact data, but from my past research work, what we were already seeing, and some of the research which was not directly on climate change, but on reproductive health and adolescent sexual and reproductive health researches that I have done. And most of these researches have shown that the children tend to drop out from school when the father is not there.
And
the mother has more work to do. So the children, I mean, not really small ones, but the ones who are 13, 14, they have to cover off the workload at home for the father as well as the mother's workload going up. I mean, help in the sense, the workload in the sense like look after their younger siblings so that mother can go out of the house since the father is not there to do the outside work. I mean, those issues are there.
And also in your study, Kishore, teenage thing, marriage.
Yeah, and which may eventually lead to the children's dropping out from the schools, the school attendance. So, and like what Divya was, data is showing the child marriage is going up in Nepal.
Yeah, child marriage, like eloping and marrying.
But that people are saying because of the new media, some are saying because, because of the mobile phone and the social media. So it's easier for boys and girls to interact with each other. And, so that's what some research are showing, some, school of thoughts are saying, but we don't really know what really is causing the increase in child marriage. So, and those are very, very, practical observations, not really being researched or supported by data. So, the trend we are seeing, yeah.
Very, very good. I think we've come round in a whole range of issues, but at the same time around the issue of climate change, of gender, of women, of ethnic diversity, caste implications, the power structures within groups, etc. So we've covered a lot of ground. And I think that unless there is a last question that anybody is very much wishing to pose, then I think it is now 4:20 Danish time, and I cannot do a quick calculation, but I know it must be getting quite late in Nepal.
Yeah, it's
8 o'clock.
In Danish, we say 1,000 thanks, and this has been really rewarding. Next time I'm in Kathmandu, I will reward you. with a dinner in one of our very good restaurants. But on behalf of the Danish Nepali Association, we'd just like to say thank you so much for being willing to present. I can see that various people are clapping hands, so that is very, very positive for us. So Divya, thank you so much for your presentation, for your slides. I hope it was okay. I've recorded them. I have no idea where they are in my computer now, but it was fascinating. Kishore, thank you so much for supporting and coming in. Yes, I wish we could do another study. There are so many studies out there which I'd like to do.
There are so many things to understand.
I'd also like to say thanks to Ravi Chetri, who's been handling the technical side. Thanks so much, Ravi. Also to Lorna, who is my in charge of the arrangement committee, which organizes the different talks we hold in Aarhus and in Copenhagen. And let me just remind those here that the next physical talk is Karen Valentine, who's talking about Ramagat in Kathmandu, and she's giving her talk in Copenhagen on the 5th of October, and in Aarhus on the 19th of October. So that's the next physical talk that are taking place, and you can see all that on the back of Nepal Vision. So to finally conclude, thank you once more, Divya. Thank you, Kishore, and thank you to all those who attended for, I think you got a lot out of this. I hope you did. So until next time, and next time in Kathmandu. Namaste.
Thank you so much, and those who attended this webinar.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much. Thank you, Lorna. Yeah, thank you.
We will talk soon, but I know you're off traveling, Divya, so safe travels.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Nils,
much.
thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Yes. Thank you and have a nice evening. Bye bye.